We never know where life will lead us or what may hinder us along the way. But while every day can feel like one big question mark, it doesn't have to. With the right insights, strategies, and solutions from Western and Southern Financial Group, together we can look ahead to leave the unknown behind.
What's Pro Football Focus doing? Last week they had Brady. This week they got Brady.
We're literally doing it differently from everybody else.
As a matter of fact, moving forward from this point on, I will not make reference to PFF.
Ready to get into it?
Yeah.
All right. We're going team by team.
I would be very careful about slinging stuff.
Am I going to get sued?
We got legal on this?
I like football season, all the things that go with it.
Welcome into the PFF NFL podcast. Steve Palazzolo back here with Sam Monson, and we've got all the week 2 action to review here, Sam. What a crazy week. I feel like I say this every week, but wasn't this extra special?
Yeah, I didn't have tremendously high hopes for this week heading into it. You looked at the slate of games relative to week 1, you're like, it's not really as good. And then I almost made the comment in the preview show that we've already hit the part of the season where there's like multiple double-digit point spreads and, it's happening already type of thing. And then we get to the games, and, all right, some of them didn't look like they were going to be great to begin with. A lot of big scores, a lot of, heavy leads. And then all of them reversed. There was a massive comeback in every blowout. Only a couple of games were any kind of significant score margin, and just wild, ridiculous things happening left and right.
That was the first 2 weeks of the NFL, really. I mean, last week we said it seemed like the game started slow, and then you get into the 3 o'clock hour during that first slate, and they go nuts. Yesterday,
the witching hour. Scott Hansen.
The witching hour.
Tip of the hat.
Well, Scott Hansen knows. I mean, the NFL is just ridiculous right now. So let's get right into the action.
Let's go.
Let's start with Tua, man, in the Miami Dolphins. The Dolphins win 42-38 over the Baltimore Ravens, a game that was once 35-14.
Biggest comeback in the NFL in 12 years.
What was the last one?
Don't ask. 12 years ago. I don't know. Figure it out.
Oh, I thought you had,
the answer. Somebody said it was the biggest comeback in 12 years. I'm repeating it without doing any further research on my own.
Looks like we both picked Miami to cover the 3.5, and they did. Shout out to the Ravens fan who was like, I feel good about us being up 21 right now, and that you guys picked the Dolphins.
You gotta be careful, right? Twitter is an instant, reaction medium, and during games, there's an incredible temptation to see something and go, gotcha, right? But you gotta be careful that there isn't still time left for your gotcha to reverse, and you look like an idiot. I've learned this through experience and through mistakes.
Absolutely.
So just my experience to you as an older gentleman who's been around the block a couple of times, just make sure you don't gloat too early, because you can always wind up looking like a fool.
Just big plays galore in this game. It looked like Lamar Jackson and the Ravens had figured out the Miami defense, right?
I think they did, largely.
They did. I mean, it's not that they didn't, but it looked like they were going to emphatically answer the call.
It was more that Miami then decided to go, all right, fine, let's do this.
Lamar averages 11 yards per attempt, 3 touchdowns, including a 75-yarder to Rashad Bateman. Lamar has a 79-yard run for a touchdown, averaging 13 yards a pop on the ground. Looks like the Ravens are running away with it, but the Dolphins keep creeping back. The Ravens are busting coverages, and it's the Dolphins offense with Tyreek Hill going 11 catches for $190, 2 scores. Jalen Waddle, 11 for 171, 2 scores. First time in NFL history we've seen 10 catches, 150 yards, and 2 touchdowns for teammates. And boy, this is exactly why you get Tyreek Hill and load up on playmakers.
Yeah, and this is, my concerns heading into the season were, well, can these two guys fire at the same time? Because in San Francisco, they couldn't get more than one guy firing at the same time. It was either Debo or it was Kittle or Ayuk. They weren't getting games where two of those guys are both having huge days. It was like it was one or nothing. Well, this is the game, right? I mean, Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle combined for 33 targets. 33 targets for two guys. That's a game for some teams.
I don't know why you didn't think they could coexist, man. It doesn't matter
if they previous experience of the same offense.
It doesn't matter if they put up the numbers. In this game, they did. But yeah, 33 targets between them, and we've just got some evidence. Tua played really well. But now you've got the ability to go down the field. We had that touchdown that Tua threw to Mike Gesicki that looked. I'm not going to say it looked like an overthrow. I think he was just trying to throw the ball above the rim and let Gesicki go up and get it.
And he did.
You just see the playmakers, man. This is how you win. This is how you put up points in the NFL.
Yeah, and look, I'm impressed by how they're deploying them. They're not just, lining each guy up in a position and saying, go play. They're like Tyreek Hill lined up in the backfield. This was something that happened early in his days in Kansas City and then kind of went away once they realized what he was and how he could be used and the effect that he had on defenses. Miami is tapping back into that. So, this is somebody that's come from this Kyle Shanahan coaching tree of tin cup and being able to turn nothing into something. What if Mike McDaniel is actually able to apply that to superior athletes and actually end up with an even better version of the Shanahan offense? I mean, look, this is week 2. Week 1 is overreaction week, where it's the first thing you saw new for 6 months. So you go crazy and react to something, right? The sharp people are like, nah, we're not going to do that today. We're going to wait. We're going to wait till week 2. But then week 2 is when you overreact, and that's when you screw it up, right? So week 2,
we can overreact.
Miami goes out there, hangs 42 on Baltimore, puts up record-setting numbers in terms of a duo in Jalen Waddle, Tyreek Hill. Tua looks great. Week 2 is when everyone's going to lose their minds and go, it's working. Miami's incredible. Mike McDaniel is better than Kyle Shanahan, and all this kind of stuff. This was, I would assume, the high watermark of what this whole collection is capable of. But it shows that that's there, which is a statement. Like before, I don't think we knew that this was, this is what supporters and optimists would have been looking at. Hey, what if they do this? And you'd be like, yeah, but what are the chances that actually happens? Now, it might not happen long term, but it just happened against the Baltimore Ravens, who are generally a pretty good defense. So this is a hell of a game for Miami to show up with.
Coming into the season, we talked about Tua averaging under 6.5 yards per attempt. That's a really low number through 2 years. And now we're talking about week 1. I think he was over 8 this week, 9.4 on 50 attempts. Once again, what the Shanahan offense derivatives have done is put up, big yards per attempt, create chunk plays. And Tua and the Dolphins offense are doing that in part because of these playmakers. But Tua's played a little bit better this week. I don't think he played well in week 1. He missed some throws, tried to throw the game away in the fourth quarter. He played much better in this game. 6 touchdowns, 2 picks. 18% of his career touchdowns came yesterday. Tua Tagovailoa is in year 3 in the NFL. He's had some injuries. He wasn't the starter right away, but he had 18% of his career touchdowns in one game just yesterday.
You know what I'm really excited about for this offense, this version, the Mike McDaniel version of this offense, is they are still leaning into RPOs. So last year, Miami ran an absolute boatload of RPOs, and it was largely because everything around them stank. And they were trying to buoy it up, right? The offensive line is garbage. Let's try and remove a bunch of plays where the offensive line is even pass blocking, and that'll help. It will protect it. And let's face it, Tua's not doing that well because the offensive line's garbage and the receivers aren't great. So let's give him a bunch of simple reads and RPOs and free plays. Usually, there's a lot of teams that run RPOs for that reason. There's also a lot of teams that run them because they're effectively cheat codes. They're free manufactured offense that, there's a reason the Kansas City Chiefs lead the NFL in RPO rate. It's a good thing that works.
Yeah.
But for some reason, Kyle Shanahan has never really used RPOs. Last season, the 49ers ran them under 5% of the time. The Chiefs were at over 20% of the time. So 4 times the rate that Kyle Shanahan executes. And the Dolphins last year were one of the top 5 teams. They ran a few of them yesterday. They've been top 5 this season. So that's an area where again, are you going to lose the run of yourself and get out of control and go, Mike McDaniel's better than Kyle? He's the mastermind. Kyle Shanahan's just the stooge taking all the credit for it. That's probably over the top. But if you're looking for evidence that Mike McDaniel can bring that offense over and evolve it, add elements to it, add layers, add depth to it, that's one. Like I've said for a while that I think Shanahan is essentially leaving some meat on the bone or not picking up some low-hanging fruit because why do they not integrate RPOs into an offense that's already a cheat code? It seems like just free yardage sitting there that he's not using. If Mike McDaniel's willing and able to pick that up in addition to the Jalen Waddle, Tyreek Hill stuff, that's exciting.
This game could have gotten even crazier. Look, I think Lamar Jackson played well, but there was a point where the Dolphins got within a touchdown. And Lamar, they did the zero blitz deal. I think it was on a zero blitz again, but Lamar threw it back and inside. Xavier Howard got his hands on it. Should have been a pick six.
Right? Especially for Xavier Howard.
That would have, right, exactly. Howard does not miss those opportunities. Like we talk about Trayvon Diggs, like when you might throw it to him and it might be a little lucky, but he catches it.
Yep.
Xavier Howard has those same skills. So as crazy as it was that the Dolphins made this comeback and had the game-winning touchdown late, it was almost a game-tying pick six.
Yeah.
From Lamar Jackson.
Against the blitz in this game, Lamar Jackson went 13 of 16 for 213 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks for a perfect passer rating of 158.3. Now, as you say, it's helped by the fact that Xavier Howard didn't
plus the run that Lamar had.
Right. It's helped by the fact that Xavier Howard didn't pick off a pass, take it back to the house. But I think you can fairly conclusively say that they figured something out from last time.
The one thing that I would be concerned, though, if I'm a Ravens fan, and I know we're not supposed to talk about the run game here on the PFF NFL podcast,
never.
But the Ravens running backs had 15 carries. I mean, Justice Hill led the team with 16 yards for running backs. I mean, Lamar goes 9 for 119. There was a point in this game where it was like, okay, this feels like old school Ravens. It's not a high volume passing attack, but Lamar is just uber efficient. And they're creating chunk plays. Rashad Bateman, Mark Andrews, Isaiah Likely gets in there, chunk play after chunk play. And then you look up and it's like, oh, wait, they haven't run the ball at all. That's where the 2019 team was missing. In 2019, Lamar would have put up those numbers, right? Only 29 attempts for 318 yards. He would have put up those numbers with another 200 yards on the ground from the team. And through 2 weeks, the Ravens have not been running the ball effectively at all, and I think that's a big part of, hey, they weren't able to put this game away. This is the opposite of what people have said the Ravens are.
Yeah.
But usually when they have a lead, they're putting this thing away.
Ben Stockwell tells me that Lamar has now already broken Michael Vick's record for 100-yard quarterback rushing games. Career.
Oh, yeah, I believe
it. So do I, but what's the number? You know off the top of your head? How many is it?
Probably 3 or 4.
So he's now at 9. To me, that's the most amazing part of that record is that Michael Vick only had 8 100-yard quarterback rushing days in his career.
Yeah, but he only played like 2 years in a world where they were looking at design quarterbacks. They ran a few quarterback design runs back then. But
doesn't that just doesn't that just sort of highlight how absurdly square peg and a round hole Michael Vick's entire career was? It's like you had Lamar before Lamar, for want of a better expression, and you managed to get 8 games like this out of him. And those would have been 8 games where it was like Vic just scrambled around and did something crazy, as opposed to you actually leaned in any way, shape, or form to his designed rushing threat. It's just like malpractice as a play caller.
I know. I wish we had a few. I wish Vic came in just a couple years later. We got to get Michael on the show. We'll get him over here. All right. So Dolphins 42, Ravens 38. Dolphins moved to 2-0. Heartbreaker from the Ravens. The secondary was just a disaster. It looked like Kyle Hamilton was at the center of at least one of the coverage busts there. Yeah. There was a lot of Ravens yelling at him. It also, the Tyreek Hill one where he got behind the defense looked like just pure cover two. And there was just no safety there. There was a 15-second stretch where the Ravens...
The second one?
I know this is bad. There was the first one, I want to say. I don't even remember.
The one where he just ran past Marcus Peters?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But we had poor grades on pretty much everybody in the secondary for the Ravens. That's supposed to be a strength, so they got to figure that out. But there was like a 15-second stretch of real time where the Ravens forgot to cover people and then the Browns forgot to cover people. And obviously that's when those
it's not a good thing when you have to specify which horrific coverage bust on Tyreek Hill are we talking about here.
Not great. I want to get into the other AFC East over AFC North game, but don't forget the PFF. That PFF now has an app featuring industry-leading fantasy football advice, the exclusive PFF betting dashboards, and the latest premium football analysis, all in the palm of your hand. So go check out the PFF app. Be sure to sign up and leave us a 5-star review. The PFF app is live. All right, let's move on to the Jets 31, the Cleveland Browns 30.
See, the guy in the chat is doing your job for you, saying everyone make sure you hit like to make this go viral. See,
yes.
James has got it. You don't.
More likes. Tell your friends, too. Tell your friends. Shout out to my dad. Happy birthday, Dad. He's probably watching. Dad, hit that thumbs up button.
Happy birthday, Steve's dad.
Yeah. Steve Sr.
Steve Sr.
Little Steve. He's like 5'8" now.
Little Steve.
Yeah. I think he used to be 5'11". I call him Big Steve still, but, that's what's funny, though, because I'm like a foot taller than him.
It's very funny.
Yeah, it's very funny. We laugh. We laugh at that. Happy birthday, Dad. All right. Jets 31, Browns 30. Tyler, how's it going back there, man?
Oof.
It's a rough day.
Rough day. I love games where something happens and, because
I picked Cleveland.
Yeah, that's tough.
I was rooting for the Jets because I thought I picked the Jets. I talked myself out of it late. I thought I covered this.
Apparently not.
My picks are the worst.
Yeah, you stink.
Man,
you didn't have a good week. I've had a pretty good week.
Yeah, second straight week here.
I got 9 wins, and we still got 2 games left.
We don't overreact.
No.
So what were you saying?
I love games where, this is a weird kind of world where there's a stat for everything, and a lot of them are pretty heavily contrived. But I love games where something weird happens at the end, and then there's a bunch of stats that come out to tell you just how absurdly unlikely that was.
Yeah.
So
I want to hear it.
ESPN stats and info. The Browns blew a 13-point lead in the final 1 minute and 22 to lose to the Jets 31-30. NFL teams had won the last 2,229 consecutive games when leading by at least 13 points in the final 2 minutes. So you can give them like another 38 seconds on top of what they took to blow it. The last team to blow such a lead, the Cleveland Browns, in Week 9 of the 2001 season versus the Bears. So the Browns...
that was when they threw the pick sixes.
The Browns broke...
Safety Mike Brown?
A 2,229 consecutive streak since the last time they did this. And then Field Yates had a tweet that says, crazy look-back moment. With 1 minute and 55 left in the game, and this is worth talking about, Nick Chubb took a carry for 12 yards and a touchdown to go up 30-17. The Jets had no timeouts left. If Chubb simply went down, the Browns could have run out the clock. Instead, the Jets pull off a miracle 31-30 win.
Yeah.
This is, I think, a theme from this weekend, from NFL and generally right now, is that at an age where you should be getting better at this stuff, late game clock management, just understand situational awareness generally between coaching and players, it feels like at the very minimum we're staying where we are and not getting better. And if you're looking at it pessimistically, you can say we're actually getting worse. Like Nick Chubb has to have that awareness of what time is on the clock, what the situation is, what is the difference here between me scoring and me not scoring. Does that make a material difference between us winning this game? Now, look, going up 30-17 seems great. But if the difference is small chance versus no chance, stick with the no chance.
Yeah, I mean, it's just to rehash that situation, too. Chubb gets into the end zone with 35 seconds left in the game. 35 seconds left in the game. And I bet even if you look at, like, the win probability – I haven't looked at the win probability charts.
This is a separate touchdown.
Not the one that goes up 13?
Because the Browns scored as well in that final.
I'm talking about the Browns.
Thing. Yeah, but the field the one where they score up to go up with 1 minute and 55 left in the game is when he first scores.
No, I'm seeing. Am I looking at the? Oh, I'm looking at the wrong. Oh, with 1 minute 55. I got you. I'm looking at the time of the drive. I think. I'm sorry. Yes. So Nick Chubb goes in to score, to go up 13, 30 with 2 minutes with $1.55, right? So 30-17 at that point. I mean, you're still expecting the Browns to probably have 99% win probability.
Of course.
But if he goes down, the game's over.
Yeah.
But if he goes down, the game is over. So you have a missed extra point, which also helped put this, allow this to happen. And then with 1 minute 32 left, The Browns busted coverage. Right around the same time, the Ravens forgot to cover as well. Something happened with the AFC North coverages. And the Jets get within a touchdown. It's like, all right, they're within 6. And that's fine, right? There's still plenty of time. I mean, you just get the onside kick if you're the Browns, and it's over. Instead, the Jets get the onside kick. Joe Flacco hits Garrett Wilson, who you said is pretty good. Garrett Wilson is good. Had the fade touchdown
really
earlier.
Good game yesterday.
Looking good, man. A 15-yard seam route. Joe Flacco, made some good throws at the end. Got to give Joe Flacco credit. But the Jets win 31-30 in part because Chubb doesn't go down in the extra point.
Yeah.
Missed extra point. And a million other things, too.
Missed extra point is huge. But
the busted coverage, but there's a lot of bad stuff that all happened at the same time.
I don't want to make it all like, hey, Nick Chubb, what a glaring mistake that he cost him the game. But it feels like that's a situation where he has to know. Like, we've seen NFL players do that before, where you had the choice between scoring, putting yourself up a touchdown, which is good, but it still leaves the possibility of this happening. Like, a lot needs to happen from that point afterwards for you to blow this game. It's not like that's Nick Chubb's fault. But the difference between you do win if you stop versus you almost certainly win, but not certainly, That lack of awareness, I think, is something that for some reason seems to be getting worse for teams in the NFL right now.
It's one of those things where they put so much time and effort into it. And I have to say, when I was just watching training camp and watching some of the end of game situations that they work on, think about how many hundreds of thousands of situations that there truly are at the end of a football game. And I'm thinking it's really tough. Like they're practicing 50 seconds left, we're down 1 score.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm thinking about, this is one specific situation. How do you even have time to practice all of these situations?
I thought that yesterday at the end of the Rams-Falcons game, which we'll get to, where they decided to do that. Let's take an intentional safety where we run around and, chew up as much clock as possible.
Yeah.
I thought, where did they practice this?
Yeah, right.
Where did they find the time in the hour-and-a-half practice session to carve out 10 minutes to go, all right, when this happens, this is what everybody needs to do individually?
Yeah. I mean, look, my tendency, and I think the way, we analyze the game, Sam, it's very much player-driven. Do you have the good players? Do you not? We just said that with the Dolphins, right? Get Tyreek Hill, get Jalen Waddle, get the speed, create big plays, all that stuff. But it is amazing how many percentage points of win probability go into the game management stuff. And I know that there are people within the organization where that's their entire job, right? I've talked to game management coaches where their entire job is to know the opposing refs and the turf and which cleats the guys are supposed to wear and, every situation, what you're supposed to do. There are people focused on that. But you have to have that communication all the way to the head coach. And at some point, like you're saying, with the Rams play, you still have to practice Brandon Powell's going to catch the ball and run backwards out of the end zone. You still have to incorporate it into practice,
and the lines of communication are so important because I would imagine whoever that guy's job is within the Browns organization is acutely aware of that Nick Chubb thing, right?
Oh, yeah.
And on this play, if the difference between him scoring or not is significant, so there has to be some kind of communication. I mean, obviously that guy is not going directly to Nick Chubb. He's probably up in the booth somewhere and Nick Chubb's down on the field. But that guy needs to be able to yell in somebody's ear and say, hey, tell Nick before this play that if the Red Sea's open, if the seas part and he's got a touchdown, go down at the 1. Somebody needs to be able to communicate that to him because, all right, maybe it is unreasonable to expect Chubb to know that, but somebody knows that, and the message didn't get through.
Poor Browns, man. They were doing montages late in the game for the last time that the Browns were 2-0. They said it was 1993. Was it 93 or 94? But they said it was 93. They were doing the whole, here's what Jurassic Park was in the theaters.
Yeah.
Is the number one hit.
Yeah.
And gas was $1. And, they were going through all this.
Old days.
Yeah. I remember 93 gas prices. It was great. High 90s, 91 cents, 94 cents. It was $1.09. They were going through the montages. Only the Browns could supersede the last time you were 2-0 montages late in the game. Jacoby Brissett played a solid game. He was
right up until the end.
Right up till the end.
He had a kind of necessary play and just went full Jacoby.
Yeah. You let Amari Cooper had 9 catches for 101. He had a touchdown. Sauce
Yeah.
Gardner may have given up his first touchdown. Looked like a coverage bust that was on him.
He also very almost gave up one like a little bit earlier to, was it Donovan Peoples-Jones in the corner of the end zone? Like, it was one of the, so many of these, like,
He pushed him out.
An inch of like foot coming down the turf, as opposed to just inside the turf, was the difference between a touchdown or not for him. Yeah, the Browns had 229 passing yards, and Amari Cooper caught 101 of those. So Cooper showed up for his first big game as a Cleveland Brown. You look at the rest of that receiving core, though, and it is like, hey, where is everybody? I mean, Donovan Peoples-Jones, that end zone thing was his one target, didn't quite come off. David Bell was supposed to be the savior, as a rookie draft, 1 catch for 6 yards. Like, where is the rest of that receiving group? Anthony Schwartz is just bringing nothing to the table at this point.
I would have to say, as much as the Browns, it felt the worst about the Browns. I felt the worst about the Browns this year, roster-wise, than I have probably the last 2 years.
Sure, I mean,
in part because of the depth at receiver and just didn't see.
Well, this is why the whole Deshaun Watson thing is significant. If you were budgeting in the idea that you might lose him for a season or 11 games or whatever it is, because you can't just burn a year of a competing caliber roster. It's too hard to maintain it. And if they did that this year, like if they went, all right, fine, we can lose this season, we'll keep it together, we'll win next year. Like, I mean, you got work to do. This is a roster that's not in as good shape as it was a couple of years ago, and now you need to get it better with a giant quarterback contract hanging around your neck.
One last thing I'll say about the Jets, having a Garrett Wilson who could have the 2 scores, and you see the route running and what he brings to the table. They're just starting to get better, right? I mean, say what you want about the Browns' clock management and all this stuff. The Jets clearly have better players now than they did last year, better players than they did 2 years ago. And it's little things like that, I think, that why we talk about them pushing into the right direction as far as their roster goes.
Not just that, but let's factor in that they're dealing with a situation that's worse than they should be, because their offensive line is in pieces right now in terms of injuries. Like, rookie Max Mitchell is starting at right tackle, gave up a few pressures. George Fant is starting at left tackle, gave up a bunch of pressures. Like, Mike, for the second week in a row, Myles Garrett has been wrecking house and costing the opposing offense big plays. Like, he destroyed Ike Ekwonu in the first game. He was destroying George Fant in this game. Wasn't quite enough, but, I mean, the Jets are dealing with that and still showing up, having a big offensive day. Joe Flacco throwing 4 touchdowns, having a couple of big-time throws in there, topping 300 yards, all those kinds of things. Like, they could be better still, because that offensive line should be better.
Browns have to – are they coming back Thursday night? Is that this week?
Yeah.
Browns-Steelers?
Browns-Steelers, Thursday night.
So they got to bounce back from this for Thursday night football. We have a special guest Wednesday?
Yes. We have the great Joe Thomas.
Making his friend of the show, returning.
Future Hall of Famer, right? He's not yet
no,
a
future
Hall of Famer?
Future Hall of Famer.
He just got put into, like, whatever the Browns call it's not a Ring of Honor. They call it something else, like Browns something or others.
What do the Browns call their Ring of Honor?
He just got inducted into it.
Your volume's a little low. I can't hear you. You don't sound excited either.
Browns Legends, that's what they call
Browns Legends. Browns legend Joe Thomas on the show on Wednesday to preview Thursday night football, Steelers and the Browns. We'll get into a few more of the games, but first, shout out to our friends at No House Advantage. They're changing the game by offering the most dynamic fantasy sports platform available today. Play in pick'em contests versus other people for the shot at winning $250,000 plus in cash. Download the app, choose a contest, select your player props, earn points for correct picks, and climb the leaderboard for your shot to win big money every day. You can also test your skills versus the house and multiply your entry by 20 if you hit all your picks. 20x, baby. Bet on up to 5 player prop over-unders and individual player matchups across every major sports league. That includes the NFL, NBA, MLB, PGA, MMA, and NASCAR. Sign up now using promo code PFFNFL at nohouseadvantage.com or download the app on the App Store to get a first deposit match up to $25. Make sure to check out No House Advantage today and experience daily fantasy sports redefined, because it's not just how you play, but also where you play. You don't want to miss out on No House Advantage. All right, let's go Bucs and Saints.
It's a lot of acronyms you can bet on.
Yeah, NFL, NBA,
MMA.
MMA, PGA.
A lot of three-letter things you can bet.
NASCAR. Is NASCAR an acronym?
I
think it might be.
Not strictly, right?
No, I don't think it is. Oh, I got this one wrong,
It
too.
is. The National Association for Stock Car Auto Racing. There you go.
I told you.
Yeah, well done.
Told you it is. Until I said it wasn't. See, this is how I do my picks.
Yeah.
Ben
That's how
tells
this
me.
whole show works. You say something like, no, and you're like, yeah, you're right.
From now, I'm going with my first instinct.
And then sticking with it. You got to back it up.
Stick with your
Can't
first
back
instinct.
down.
Yeah.
Can't let me talk you out of it. You gotta fight back. Remember, Greg's disappointed in you right now.
Greg with 2 G's was right.
He's not mad. He's just disappointed.
I'm sure he is. I'm sure he's awake at 4 in the morning right now watching us, too, with so much disappointment. Saints and Bucs. Bucs win 20-10. You called it, man. The Bucs, they overcame the Saints in the regular season. A crazy game broke out into another fight.
Yes.
It is unbelievable that Mike Evans and Marshawn Lattimore can get under each other's skin that much.
The PFF app really liked this bet for the Bucs. The app has a smart bets feature, and it sort of highlights with letter grades. The confidence that the PFF data indicates you should bet on a specific side or a specific over/under or line or whatever. It really liked the Bucs heading into this game as well. So, it was right too. The funny thing about that fight is Brady started it. Brady was pissed off. He was acting like a bitch. Things were going bad. He was swearing at people. He was shouting. He was lobbing tablets around the place again, the way Brady does when he gets into that childish temper tantrum mode.
He's intense.
And was Mike Evans down the sideline? Was that the play? Or was this a Scotty Miller one? But anyway, Marshawn Lattimore blanketed
Scotty
somebody
Miller
down.
against Marshawn Lattimore.
That was the play.
Yeah.
So Lattimore blanketed Scotty Miller down the sideline, incompletion, just dominated him on the coverage. And he's like trotting back. And Brady starts jawing with Lattimore. And that sort of starts the whole thing. And then Fournette comes in. Lenny and Lattimore get into it. Evans sees this from the sideline and runs like 20 yards to just deck Lattimore and start the whole proper fracas. But Brady started that. Brady jawing was what caused that. That was the spark.
Just a little trash talk. It gets intense on the field.
I do like, though, this was a big weekend for fights. We got Canelo, Triple G, 3, and we got Evans Lattimore, 3.
Yeah, we needed the trilogy here.
Exactly.
So I sent a message to you at the time, and I said, this could be a win for the Bucs.
I think it is.
Because when they're on the actual football field, Evans got a couple catches yesterday, but
Lattimore, for his career, owns Mike Evans.
Yes. He essentially negates him.
Yes.
And I was thinking, even though the Bucs were missing Chris Godwin and missing Julio Jones, and they don't have a threat at tight end, it was still pretty good to lose Mike Evans if you're the Bucs, because you also lost Marshawn Lattimore.
Yeah.
And it gave some opportunity. And that's where, Brashad Perriman ends up with the game-winning
If
touchdown.
you were looking at this as a business transaction and you were saying, okay, if I could tell you going into this game that you can have both Mike Evans and Marshawn Lattimore on the field or neither of them, which would you go for?
Yeah, neither.
If you're the Bucs,
you say neither, yeah.
Because he wasn't just, he was taking away Mike Evans most of the time when he covered him, but he wasn't just taking away Mike Evans. Like the play that started this whole thing was him eliminating Scotty Miller down the sideline and taking away a deep catch that could have been there. So, and also, the thing we talked about before, which is cornerback is a kind of weak link process. You can't just have one corner because they can go somewhere else with the ball. You need a stable of really good corners. So taking away the number one guy and suddenly having none of those guys is a big thing. Whereas wide receivers, okay, if you lose your number one guy, it's not great, but you should still have a bunch of other options to go for. So the whole thing generally works out better for the Bucs to eliminate both those players in the game. At this point, I would be saying to Mike every time the Bucs play the Saints, hey, Mike, if you get yourself also, why do we use disqualified rather than ejected? Ejected is clearly a better word. Anyway,
Yeah, I have no idea.
I'm not saying do it, Mike, but if you happen to get ejected early in this game, I'll cover the fine. Brady's got that kind of catch.
Yeah, as long as you don't get suspended for the next game.
Yeah.
That's the only thing.
Yeah, right. Figure it out just that side of the suspension line. But, you get yourself ejected, I'll cover your fine, and I'll make sure you get, 5 more catches in the rest of the season to cover the loss.
So it was 3-3 at that point, and Brady hits Brashad Perriman for the go-ahead touchdown late, and the Saints just could not get anything going offensively on the other side. Bucs defense played well again, flying around on the defensive side of the ball in coverage, and Jameis just missing throws and throwing the ball to the defense, as Devin White suggested they knew he would. His former teammate said, I knew Jameis would throw us the ball.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's not like, you don't need some divine foresight to know that Jameis Winston's probably going to give you
some opportunities. Yeah.
But not to spend too much time harping on the fight, but
No, I was trying to move on.
No, I know, but I one more point. As much as on the field, Marshawn Lattimore pretty much owns Mike Evans. In the fights, Evans is killing him. Like, Evans is way ahead in points.
Aren't they kind of cheap shots though?
I mean, look, fight's a fight, Steve. You gotta have your head in a swivel in these situations.
Yeah.
All I'm saying is that Evans has floored Lattimore, I think, twice now in 3 fights.
It's funny because I've talked to some people at the Bucs who say Evans is just the nicest guy.
Yeah,
he's just the nicest guy. I mean, I know you temper and it's the heat of the battle, but Evans, they get under his skin.
Tristan Wirfs was saying in the locker room, I think afterwards, that was it Ryan Griffin? Somebody told him that, like, when he came in the league, he's like, you have to find Mike Evans after every play. Like, make sure, because this will happen. They were like, you need to locate him after every play and ensure that this isn't going to happen. Like that, yeah. So whatever happens, once he crosses the whitewash onto the field, Mike Evans becomes a different dude.
Yeah. I mean, so this look, the Bucs struggled offensively. Brady had a few passes that could have been caught. They were just very inconsistent offensively, down all of their receivers. And I think the Bucs are going back to running the ball a ton on early downs. They didn't have a ton of success up front against the Saints. They did pass protect really well. The Saints usually get a lot of pressure on Brady. They did not in this game. The Bucs O-line, from a pass protection standpoint, Brandon Walton came in because backup left tackle Josh Wells got hurt. Brandon Walton had played 4 NFL snaps to that point. He held his own in pass protection. But the Bucs are stitching it together on offense right now, trying to run the ball. I think they came into the season saying, hey, we don't want Brady throwing the ball 45 times a game like he did last year. And it feels like they're playing the long game. I mean, and so far, 2-0, but they have to stay healthy if they're going to have any kind of damage, do anything, really.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the last couple of years and how stable that offensive line was and how good it was across the 5 of this. In this game, the 5 offensive linemen with the most snaps were, as you say, Brandon Walton at left tackle, Shaq Mason, who's brand new in the building, Robert Hainsey, Tristan Wirfs, the All-Pro, and then Luke Goedeke, the rookie, who hasn't exactly been playing tremendously well as a pass blocker in particular. Like, you've gone from having 5 strong spots to having 3 question marks, and the 4th is brand new and basically Tristan Wirfs, and it's still holding up pretty well.
As I said, the Saints on the other side, Jameis just they had a couple deep ball opportunities and he missed them. Not that they were wide open or anything like that. He was just, accuracy was off too. It wasn't just Jameis throwing the ball to the defense, had a few turnover-worthy plays, a couple interceptions. It wasn't just that. It was missing some of those big play opportunities as well. Chris Olave, when he finally caught one, he fumbles. But Jameis finishes 3 interceptions, sacked 6 times, and I thought the Saints would start getting going in the second half like they did last week. They finally did get a fourth quarter touchdown to get to 10, but just not enough, man. Just not enough. Maybe missing Alvin Kamara, let some,
it certainly doesn't
dynamic ability out of the backfield, but that was impressive by the Bucs defense and ugly by the Saints offense.
The Bucs defense, I think, as a takeaway, has looked very good the first couple of weeks. I mean, they obviously caused Dallas all kinds of problems before and after Dak Prescott went down. They caused Jameis Winston all kinds of problems, or admittedly problems that he lent into and was all too happy to help with. But yeah, Tampa Bay's defense, I think, as a takeaway, looks very good to start the season and might be a thing that helps if that offensive line and consequently the offense struggles a bit more than it has been the last couple of years.
Yeah, I'm curious to see how the offense figures it out because it feels like Todd Bowles has a defensive coach has his fingerprints on the defense on the team a little bit more conservative, but the defense is playing extremely well so far for the Bucs. They've given up 13 points through 2 games. They've got the Packers next week. Bucs-Packers, one of the games of the week next week. I tweeted out who we were going to be talking about next.
Yeah?
I want to stick with it. I don't want to lie. Commanders and Lions.
Commanders.
The Lions, the number 1 scoring team in the NFL, the Detroit Lions, 36-27 over the Commanders. The Lions creating big plays all over the place. Amon-Ra St. Brown has a huge game. Jared Goff finishes with 4 touchdowns, no picks. Lions move up to 1-1.
Yeah, and this was another one of those games, sort of like last week in reverse with Detroit and Philadelphia, where I don't think it was as close as it eventually got to. The Commanders were getting stomped, and then it was 22-0 at the half, and then Washington started to come back, and
Washington started to hit a few chunk plays to get into it. Yeah,
and didn't quite get it done. But I think the Lions had this reasonably well in hand, despite the score getting close towards the end. Yeah, for the second week in a row, at least one big play on the ground. That offensive line, despite being down a couple of starters, a bit like the Jets, no Frank Ragnow. Vaitai is obviously out for what might be the entire season. A couple of weak links in the interior. They were still able to open up some pretty significant holes. And I think that's part because that offensive line is good. I think it's also part this Washington defensive front is still bad. And it's worse than the sum of the parts. Again, they don't play gap sound football. They don't play sound football at all.
Or in coverage.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
They're not doing the basic stuff right. You can't expect people to play at above and beyond an insane level when you can't even make sure you're just accounting for everything. Everyone in the right gap and everyone covering the right area generally. Point one, are we doing all of that? The answer right now is no, and has been for a while.
Yeah, I don't want to take away anything from the Lions offense because one of my takeaways is they're doing some cool stuff to create some big plays here. Little stuff like they came out with 3 tight ends, had a 3 tight end looking set, spread it out into empty. Jared Goff hits a seam route. They're creating some mismatches. They're getting guys into space. But in this game, it was kind of a combination of, hey, the Lions are doing some cool stuff offensively, and the Commanders are just terrible defensively. Their linebackers were torched, all the grades in the red there for the Commanders linebackers. Did you see who Dan Campbell put up at the podium to kick off the post-game press conference?
Yeah, the extra offense. The
Dan
extra
Skipper.
Back, yeah.
Now, Dan lists at 6'9", 317.
So he's a city favorite.
Yeah, I have a soft spot for him because at Arkansas, he listed at 6'10".
Oh, I see.
And as someone who also listed at 6'10" in college and may actually be closer to 6'9", I can relate to Dan Skipper. And, Dan Campbell puts Skipper up there saying, look, this dude, he entered the league in 2017, right? Barely played any NFL football. How many snaps does he have in his career? He had not even 200 snaps previously in his career. And he had never played guard. It's not easy playing guard at that size, And he steps in, 66th grade, nice job in the run game. Dan Skipper comes in, so Dan Campbell puts him up the podium and says, look at this guy. This dude's been battling. He's a grinder. He's going to kick off the press conference.
Yeah. The other element is the Lions offense left a lot of meat on the bone. Jared Goff didn't play well. Jared Goff put up whatever it was, 256 yards, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. Passer rating is going to be through the roof, 122. And he didn't play well. He missed a touchdown early on. He just misses a lot. You're like, okay, right now that's not a problem because the offense is still able to put up a ton of points, but at some point you're going to find a defense that is able to do a better job than that, and you actually need to hit some of these throws.
Yeah, that's what makes me feel optimistic, though, still about the Lions offense, is that those opportunities are going to be there. Not that their quarterback missed them, but that those opportunities are going to be there. Other side, you had Carson Wentz. Remember, this is the battle of the first 2 quarterbacks drafted.
Yes.
In 2016. You still have Wentz.
And what a battle.
And what a battle. Wentz, still boom or bust. I would rather roll with that Wentz, though. I would rather roll with boom or bust Wentz and take my chances down the field if I'm the Commanders. Sometimes it's going to be ugly. Sometimes it's I think the problem with Wentz, Aiden Hutchinson had 3 sacks. Carson Wentz holding the ball in the pocket, dropping his eyes when there's any sort of pressure and taking those negative plays. He's got to get better with that, but I know that's been an issue for a few years now for Carson Wentz.
Yeah, but also before we get off the Lions offense, we got to mention Amon-Ra St. Brown, who turns out is one of the best receivers in the NFL randomly.
I saw somebody post from Hard Knocks. Did you see the thing he did in Hard Knocks?
No. I haven't seen a minute of Hard Knocks this year.
Well, this was a clip.
Catch up on that.
It was a clip that showed up on Twitter yesterday, I saw. And it was basically him listing, I think it was 16 receivers that were drafted ahead of him.
Yeah.
And he's just going through, he's like, Jalen Waddle. No, it's Jamar Chase, LSU. Jalen Waddle, Alabama. He's just going through all of them. And it's not like he's listing bad players. This isn't like the Brady 6.
No,
where
right.
it's like, are you kidding me? You drafted this dude over me? Giovanni Carmazzi? You know, it's not that. There's a lot of good players there. But Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Gio catching strays.
Poor Gio. I mean, Amon-Ra St. Brown is a dude, man.
Yeah.
58-yarder on the ground and another $116 and 2 scores.
Right, the end around for almost 60 as well was a ton of yards, scrimmage yards. But he's one of these guys like Antonio Brown, where remember Antonio Brown had this absurd run where he put together that was like 5+ catches,
at least 5
50+
catches,
yards in the game, a consecutive streak, all that kind of thing. Amon-Ra St. Brown is racking those up as well. Like just this incredible run of every single game he's catching at least 5 balls, he's getting at least 50 yards, he's getting a touchdown, and it just keeps on trucking, despite the fact that he's still kind of their only viable receiving weapon. Like Amon-Ra St. Brown had 12 targets in this game, caught 9 of them. You look, all right, who's next? TJ Hawkinson with 7 targets, caught 3 passes for 26 yards. Who's next? DeAndre Swift, the running back. He's their only guy. Okay, every now and again a receiver pops up with a catch and a big play and blah, blah. But this is Amon-Ra St. Brown and the run game carrying this offense, despite the fact that when you look at him, you still sort of say, okay, he's playing really well, but does he have the skill set of a true number one? I don't really know, and yet it still works.
Keeps getting the job done. And look, all offseason we talked about maybe the Lions certainly aren't done at building their group of playmakers, but you do have this guy, Amon-Ra St. Brown, as an awesome starting point. Jameson Williams is going to return.
That can be transformative,
right? I mean, that's what I'm excited about with this Lions offense. I want to see that they did it against the Eagles in Week 1 in a comeback attempt. They did it Week 2 against Washington. You know, how much is Washington's defense? You know, William Jackson just falling down at the catch point on that one touchdown and everything. I mean, there's just some bad stuff in there, but probably exciting times here for the Lions who get their first win of the season.
Now back to Washington's offense. The update of how wrong was Sam. I am again not quite ready to completely declare defeat, but for 2 weeks now, I've been impressed by Jahan Dotson. There was more separation on his tape in this game than there was in Week 1. You know, his touchdown was a nice sort of release to get the inside release on a guy who was playing with that kind of leverage. His deep play, he just ran straight by a corner, which is something that isn't on his tape an awful lot in college or the NFL. So, yeah, the Washington looks like they may have been right with that pick in the first round, which would be huge. And the other thing I love about this offense is they're finally tapping into the versatility with those mismatch type players. You know, Curtis Samuel lining up in the backfield and just toasting the dude that was trying to cover him on a wheel route. Like these are important ways of stealing an advantage schematically, in addition to having good players.
I don't know if grades are finalized for this or not, but Wentz is going to finish with a passing grade under 60. But I think going back to this load up on playmakers concept, they scored 27 points. I know they were playing from behind a lot in the whole deal, Washington. But even when you don't have great even when you don't have great quarterback play, having Curtis Samuel as your 3 and using him in that way, Terry McLaurin as your 1, Jahan Dotson now, Washington's could play some crazy games here. They could play some exciting and crazy games because it'll be volatile and Wentz is going to throw passes falling all over the place and some are going to be good and some are going to be bad. But the Commanders have to do a better job defensively.
And because that Washington defense, I think, is going to do this all the way in terms of bad busts, bad big plays, all those kinds of things. I think they're going to put Wentz in a situation a lot where he's going to have to drag the offense to something. You know, they're going to be chasing a lot of games, is what I'm saying.
The NFL action's in full swing here at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. We're talking touchdowns, big plays, and even bigger wins. New customers can bet just $5 on any NFL team to win and get $200 in free bets if they do. If that's not enough, everyone can boost their winnings with DraftKings stepped-up same-game parlays. Right now, for every leg you add, you could boost your winnings for up to 100%. With payouts bigger than ever, why bet on football anywhere else? To make things even sweeter, all you do, you could throw down on the stepped-up same-game parlays once per game all season long. So, all season long, the deal is there. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use promo code PFF to get $200 in free bets if your team wins when you place a $5 bet on any football game. That's code PFF only at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Minimum age and eligibility restrictions apply. See show notes for details. Stepped up same-game parlays all season long with DraftKings. All right, let's go. Jacksonville 24, Colts 0. Hey, I got this one right. I know, right? I didn't change my mind on this one.
We both got this right.
We both took Jacksonville.
Yep.
Right, I said I gave the Jags one more chance here.
You did.
Anyway, this is the best Trevor Lawrence has looked.
Yes.
In a while. The best he's looked in a while. He finishes 25 for 30. So only 5 incompletions, 235, 2 touchdowns. The best throw he had fell incomplete. The deep ball, Jamal Agnew. Goes through his hands. Probably the best throw Lawrence has made in a while. Mm-hmm. But this offense just did a really nice job. I know that it's not that they lit up the scoreboard or anything, but using Christian Kirk out of the backfield on the angle route for 1 touchdown. They used Trevor Lawrence rolling left, rolling right, and that's part of what has made why Trevor Lawrence was such a good prospect. You don't have a whole bunch of righties that you're going to roll left, and they just did a nice job creating space. It wasn't that the throws were difficult or anything. He was just in command, in control, and Jags did a nice job.
Yeah, not to dump on Mitchell Trubisky randomly in the middle of a Jacksonville analysis, but there was a play yesterday where Trubisky escaped pressure, rolled to his left, and almost just had a conniption and fell over. Like he reached. There was somebody chasing him. Judon, I think, was chasing him in the open field, but like you could tell, there was a moment where his brain just went, I'm physically incapable of doing anything here. Like there's literally no way I can contort my body and throw the ball from the angle that I'm running at towards the sideline going left. Whereas Trevor Lawrence is one of those people that can actually achieve that without just falling over.
I can't believe you hijacked the Jags-Colts game to just make fun of Mitchell, and we haven't even gotten there yet.
Just in relation to that very specific point you made. Look, so first point I think is an important one, that is the best probably we've seen from Lawrence. Maybe
there's a couple of the last Colts game or last year's Bengals game. There's a couple games.
Maybe that Bengals game.
It's bad that we can remember the two.
Right. And I do think that even compared with those other games, this one felt better. So this, I think, is the new high watermark for Trevor Lawrence in terms of how he looked in the NFL. Was in total command of the offense. Everything was actually running pretty smoothly. I think it's very encouraging. Look, they took a lot of crap, and we were amongst them dishing the crap for the contract they gave Christian Kirk, the giant amount of money given we'd seen from him so far in the NFL. They are at least intent on maximizing the value out of that.
Right.
They're using him well. They are using him a lot. He's their leading receiver generally. And he's been worth it so far. Like, he got a couple of touchdowns in this game. As you said, they're using him in creative ways as well. That part is encouraging. So, yeah, I thought their offense actually did look pretty good.
Jags defense deserves a ton of credit, though, too.
First shutout since that 2017 season where, Jacksonville randomly assembled one of the greatest defenses the league's ever seen. Which also came against the Colts, by the way, that 2017
Jacoby Brissett year.
Yeah.
So the Jags last year, this is what makes them tough to figure out. Last year, they had that one game against the Buffalo Bills where Josh Allen took over. The Josh Allen game, they beat the Bills 9-6. And it was like, man, there's some potential on that defense with the pass rushers and all that stuff. So I just want to say, like, we've kind of seen this before, but they're doing a really nice job. They've got Arden Key, Josh Allen, Trayvon Walker, a couple other guys. They're using their speed rushers, putting them all out there, creating havoc up front. Matt Ryan just looks horrendous anytime there's any kind of pressure.
Which is happening a lot now.
Yes, and so this has been the concern with Matt Ryan as he gets later in his career. He's playing behind some weak offensive lines in Atlanta. The Colts offensive line has just slowly gotten depleted over these last couple of years, or just kind of not where they were 2-3 years ago. And Matt Ryan, that one interception, he's trying to throw like a ridiculously difficult deep out and just kind of flicks it up there. He doesn't have that kind of arm talent to just flick one up there and it gets the interception. 3 picks for Matt Ryan a week after he had the 4 turnover-worthy plays. But the Jags did a really nice job up front creating havoc.
Yeah, this was the kind of game that we were talking about going into it, which is, all right, they've thrown a lot of resources at the pass rush, let's call it, generally. And it's not exactly panned out. Josh Allen is probably the closest of those players that has sort of become what they thought he might become, I guess. And even then, you're like, I mean, not really, He's become a good player. He's not a great player, which is generally what you're looking for when you're spending that kind of draft capital. But when you sort of platoon the whole group, when you think, all right, Trayvon Walker, it's going to be a work in progress, but he's going to show up a couple of times a game with just an insane athletic play, and that'll be, when you add all that together, it's enough that it can cause a team like the Colts real problems. And that's basically exactly what happened here. Like, Josh Allen had a really good game, but it was 4 total pressures. Trayvon Walker had 3. Adam Gotsis rushed the passer 7 times and got a sack and 2 hits. That was the kind of day.
Trayvon Walker pressure kind of got Gotsis, forced Ryan to step up into it.
But that was the kind of day that the Jacksonville pass rush was having. Like, they were able to time up, or the players that were actually showing up and having a couple of pressures here or there, it was well sort of timed and it all worked together to the overall effect that Matt Ryan was just having a crappy day and was under a lot of pressure over the course of it.
Yeah, so, man, ugly for the Colts. I didn't think – I don't know. I've expressed concerns about the Colts playmakers too.
Well, no Michael Pittman in this game, which is huge because he's been like their only viable, high-end wide receiver. And even it was another one of those situations where even with Michael Pittman, you're like, wow.
Oh, I'm concerned when they have Michael Pittman, but now you've got the lack of depth.
He's not great, and there's no viable secondary threat alongside him. No Michael Pittman in this game. You're like, well, who the hell are they throwing the ball to?
Yeah, so we've seen pretty much the low end of Matt Ryan over these last couple weeks. The concern, graded in the 50s from a passing standpoint. Each of the last 2 weeks, we'll see if he can bounce back. But that's an ugly performance for the Colts.
To put that into some context, you look at their 3 highest targeted receivers in this game. Number 1, tied number 1, Ashton Dulin and Desmond Patman. Each had 6 targets. Number 2 was Naheem Hines, the third down back. I mean, that's not going to work.
Aren't we seeing already, Sam, how important the depth is? I mean, depth all across. If you have offensive line issues, you need depth there. If you have defensive line issues, you need depth there. It's very challenging as a team builder to go in and say, I mean, you want to roll 8 deep at every position. I get it. But it feels like when you're missing wide receivers, right? You can't stitch that together. It's very difficult to stitch that together at receiver.
Well, what it also shows is how risky the approach of, no, we're good at this position because we got one good guy is. Well, it's like, okay, what if you lose the guy, for any period of time? This is why this is why people think the Ram strategy is idiotic, because the stars and scrubs approach works fine until the star gets hurt, and now what do? Now, the Rams have been bucking the trend injury-wise for years, and whether it's sports science, whether it's just, voodoo worship, whether it's blind luck, whatever it is, the Rams haven't had to experience that realization yet of, well, what happens when one of these guys goes down for a while and stars and scrubs becomes scrubs and scrubs. But that's what the Colts are dealing with in this game. Like, their one good receiver became no good receivers, and your offensive line is creaking, and your geriatric quarterback isn't able to do what he once did, and now you just got nothing on offense. So literally, you get nothing. 0 points for you. Jacksonville blanks you, and you look terrible. Like, it's week 2, so must-win games are ridiculous. But so since they expanded the playoffs, the extra wildcard team, no teams have made the playoffs starting 0-2. None.
Well, good news, the Colts are 0-1.
Perfect. So they're well in the hunt.
So they're okay. I don't like this 0-2 stat. I don't like the 0-2 stat.
The any of them, or the specific one?
The one like, hardly any teams make the playoffs when they start 0-2.
Because the number was bad anyway, but now since they've expanded it, it's 0.
No teams have what?
No teams have made the postseason since they expanded the number of wild cards starting 0-2.
You mean last year? They expanded it last year.
We've had 2 years, haven't we?
2 years.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So no.
You're using
I'm using a 2-year sample size. 0 teams.
Yeah.
You check it out. It's mathematically sound.
Yeah, and never in a 17-game schedule.
Exactly.
Does the team do that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's over.
Mm-hmm. Except the Colts are 0-1.
It's like NFL media's favorite week 2 talking point. Like, don't fall 0-2. You can't do it. You can't fall to 0-2.
Yeah.
Can't do it. That's what the problem is. You should coach to not be 0-2 because it's insurmountable. You do whatever you can to win. 0-2 teams don't make the playoffs because 0-2 teams are usually not good. Not because it's an insurmountable hole.
The other thing from this game, again, the stars and scrubs approach not working out when the star isn't there. No Shaquille Leonard on defense again because he's still injured. And without Shaquille Leonard, the defense just isn't good. Like all of a sudden, everything falls apart for the Colts if you lose one of your good players on either side of the ball. That's essentially what I'm saying here.
All right, let's go. New England Patriots 17, Pittsburgh Steelers 14. Both teams now 1-1. I think at least we expected a defensive struggle. Offensive struggle? What the heck was this? The difference in this game, if you had told me that the difference in this game was going to be Nelson Aguilar mossing a cornerback for a 44-yard touchdown, I'd say that doesn't happen. Nelson Aguilar doesn't do that. But he did. He did in this game. Jump ball, essentially. And Aguilar goes up and gets it. And that proves to be Mac Jones' only touchdown and a big difference in the game. The Patriots' run game did a really nice job down the stretch to seal this game against Pittsburgh. Steelers, obviously, without T.J. Watt here. Yeah. And tough getting pressure on the quarterback without him.
Aguilar is a very strange player to me.
Well, yeah.
I really liked him coming out that year in the draft. And then when he had his first good year in the NFL, it was in a completely different role than the way he played in college. Like in college, he was more of a deep threat than anything else. And then he became this sort of horizontal slot, high volume guy for the Eagles in the one good year that he had. And then the good years weren't particularly consistent. And then all of a sudden it's like, he's becoming that really good deep threat again. But even when he was a deep threat in college, he wasn't mossing people. It was like, I'm going to run by you and I'm going to catch those, in stride type of thing. He's just, it's a very unusual player. And there's almost nothing consistent about how he's good when he is good. And that doesn't roll around all that often. I don't even have a more specific point than that other than he confuses me as a player.
He's a weird player. The way I described him, has he been in the league 5 years? He's one of those guys that's had 2 out of 5 years that have been really good and in completely different roles.
But you're right. One of the most unlikely things to have happened this weekend, in the weekend of all-time unlikely things, is Aguilar going up and absolutely mossing Ahkello Witherspoon for a big play. So this was, I think, the takeaway of this game. And I don't want to be like, hey, we were right again, but we got this one right. Like when you break it all down. Yeah, I'm not even talking about like the score, but this was how we described it, which is when you boil all this down, what this game was 2 mediocre sides slapping each other in the face and hoping one of them fell over. You know what I mean?
Like us at the Tortilla Challenge.
Exactly. And it's like nothing here is good. It's all just like, I mean, one of these teams has to win eventually, right? Like, it has to end at some point. And, the Patriots ended up being the team, but what typified it to me was the sort of sequence that determined the outcome of this game, which is Mac Jones throws a horrible, interceptable pass that should have been picked off, should have cost them the ball. Didn't get punished for it. Dropped interception. They were up 10-6 at that point. So like, all right, Mac Jones turns the ball over there. The Steelers are rolling. They can take the lead. Maybe they win the game. Almost immediately, the Patriots punt the ball away. Gunnar Olszewski, former New England great, lets it clang off his face, muffs the ball away. Patriots recover. They're now set up at the 10. They then end up scoring, touchdown right away, and all of a sudden what should have been giving the ball to the Steelers in pretty good field position ends up being a score in your favor, putting you kind of at a distance in a game where the Steelers' offense wasn't exactly going to roll and punish you for it.
Special teams matters sometimes.
Well, certainly catching the ball with your face matters.
It matters. It matters just when it's bad. Yeah. It matters when it's disastrous. So yeah, Patriots win 17-14. Defense down the stretch there was a key play where Matthew Judon. I do love when edge rushers have to peel into coverage and make good plays.
Saw that. Yeah.
Matthew Judon covers Najee Harris out of the backfield, and it was underthrown. I mean, Trubisky missed the throw. There was a better throw to be made there, but Judon running with Najee Harris breaking up the pass, and that was pretty much it for the Steelers. Trubisky still doesn't throw the ball down the field very much or enough? Yeah,
I mean,
how
that
much
offense is just like somebody.
5.1 yards per
change.
attempt again for Trubisky.
Yeah, something needs to change in that offense in terms of just what they're doing.
They should have good playmakers.
It was at least better than last week, where his time to throw was 2 seconds. You know, but yeah, they need to get more aggressive. They need to. You can't just continue every bad, disadvantageous down and distance situation. It's like a dump off to the running back. Still, we were all putting that down to Roethlisberger the last couple of years. Evidently, it's more systemic than that.
Maybe Big Ben was right. Maybe it is the offensive system there. But yes, when you have those, I understand teams that are depleted at receiver, and they are just trying to get by. Right? They're just trying to get by.
That's not the Steelers.
The Steelers have Deontay Johnson, who they just paid. They have Chase Claypool, who will pull out some freak plays. They have George Pickens. They have Najee coming out of the backfield. They have Pat Freiermuth. They've got playmakers, man. They're all healthy, too.
Deontay Johnson had a couple of insane catches in that game and a couple of more insane almost catches.
Right.
He could have had a monster day.
So I said this with Big Ben last year. I said if the Steelers are going to get the most out of him, he might be inconsistent throwing the ball down the field, but just let him do it. Like, just let him chuck it, and you'll have some ugly performances, but let those guys make some plays. I think the Steelers have to do that with Trubisky too. Just chuck it up, man. Chuck it up. Let those guys make plays. I know it's not fun offense necessarily, but you got to let them play.
Minka had another great game.
He did.
Which is, I don't know if he does this, like if he manages to time. Remember, like was it the first couple of games he played for the Steelers where he had like back-to-back 90 grades? It's like, oh wow, the Steelers just signed the best player in the history of the game. What a steal! Miami are idiots. They were just using him wrong the whole time. And then like that Minka kind of went away, and you just got the standard baseline for the rest of the time. He seems to time up the ability to repeat back-to-back games when he's going to play out of his mind. Just enough to keep the narrative going that he's like the best safety in the game, and then we'll go back to like usual standard play.
Safety is a weird position like that anyway. It's tough to make that big of an impact. But last year at this time, Minka was missing tackles, busting coverages, allowing some big plays, even though he'll have some of those splash plays, and now he's not doing that.
Mac Jones kind of looked like crap again. That's not good if you're the Patriots offense. Mac Jones year 2. Can we take a step forward? Can we really show the high end? And he's going backwards.
Yeah, they scored the 17, including, like you said, the kind of a gimme, getting the good field position there. Should have had 2 picks, had the 1, as you mentioned. It's a weird offense where it's a lot of underneath stuff, and then they, like last week, a random deep ball to Kendrick Bourne. This week, the jump ball to Nelson Aguilar. It is disjointed offensively for New England for sure. So they've, but Cole Strange playing well up front, and the offensive line did a nice job at the end to seal the deal when they needed to. They're picking up 6 yards, really 7 yards, right? They did a nice job on the ground when they needed to seal the deal. But this offense, the pass game has to be more consistent.
Their offensive line is very good. It didn't grade well, certainly from a run blocking perspective in week 1, but it's a better unit than that. Like, we know that already from previous experience of this line. But yeah, Cole Strange, the most maligned and mocked first-round pick of the draft, was going one-on-one with Cameron Hayward for most of this game. And okay, it ended up with him being handed like what's going to end up being a reasonably low pass blocking grade, but considering that opposition, he did very well. He was one-on-one with him a lot and held up fine. Cameron Hayward has wrecked significantly better offensive linemen than that over the years one-on-one. So for him to end up doing as well as he did, I think is impressive.
Our newest sponsor is revolutionizing. Man, I can't read.
No.
The world of sports betting and fan engagement by making sports fandom profitable. That company is Symbol, the stock market for sports teams. Symbol was a PFF sponsor last year, and they're back for this football season. Symbol lets you trade pro and college teams like stocks and even earn cash dividend payouts when your teams win. Symbol took the thrill of sports betting and turned it into the stock market to give you a platform where you can buy and sell sports teams and profit from your sports knowledge. This is perfect. So download the Symbol mobile app for iOS by searching SIMBULL in the App Store and use code PFF to receive a free team stock valued up to $150 upon signing up. Whether you want to invest in an up-and-coming team like the Chargers, the GOAT in Tom Brady and the Bucs, or the new top dog in the Buffalo Bills. Symbol allows you to buy and sell team stocks based on who you think is going to be on the rise. Create a free account, enter code PFF to get a free stock valued up to $150 and start making money off your sports knowledge right now. SIMBULL, Symbol, iOS App Store. All right, what else do we have in the 1 o'clock slate here? Giants 19, Carolina Panthers 16. The Giants moved to 2-0, man.
Yeah.
I think we both got this one wrong.
Yeah.
Are you ready to crown the Giants?
No, but I'm done on Baker. I'm out. That was it. That was his opportunity. I gave him that week. I said that was going to be pissed off Baker. Wasn't too much pressure, but no pressure was where we were going to see Baker show up and just absolutely annihilate the Giants. Didn't happen. I'm out. I'm done.
Oh, man.
That's the end of my rope. That's it. That right there. It's the straw that broke the camel's back. I'm out.
Baker finishes 14 of 29.
Yeah.
For a $145.
Mm-hmm.
5 yards per attempt.
Not a single big-time throw in there.
Had the opportunity for another comeback attempt.
Uh-huh.
This is where I've struggled with Baker the last few years.
That even when he was playing well, when it got to crunch time, hey, here's a 2-minute drill, go win the game. Invariably just crapped out.
And you've got Wink Martindale on the other side. You know he's going to bring the house. You got to be prepared for the blitz. You got to be prepared for free rushers, and you get that in crunch time. And Baker's dropping his eyes and looking at the rush and the whole deal, and it wasn't good.
No, it was bad.
And Christian McCaffrey doing what he can, creating at least one big play, 49-yarder in there, ran the ball pretty well, but just not good by the Panthers. And you got to give the Giants credit, man. They snuck that first one against the Titans, took advantage of this one. Every year there's a 2-0 team, or last year was the Panthers, a 3-0 team that you're like, all right, credit, tip of the cap through a couple weeks. But you might question if they're for real, if they can keep it up.
Well, last year at least,
the Giants have to be in that bucket right now.
I mean, last year the 3-0 Panthers, there were people that did think they were for real, including, by the way, within the building,
Yeah.
There were significant members of the Panthers organization that seemed to think they were for real at 3-0. And there were other people that were saying, guys, no, not really. Like, let's chill for a minute. I don't think anybody really thinks the Giants are for real, including the Giants. They're 2-0. Kudos, well done. Polite round of applause. But, we're not, nobody's getting carried away here, including the Giants.
Daniel Jones is going to average. What did he end up with grade-wise?
He's got a 50.
Okay.
Actually, sorry, no plays.
I know you just he threw one
54.
I know our listeners hate when the quarterback completely misreads the curl flat defender and just throws it right to him.
That's one of the worst. That's what he has. It's week 2, and he might have the worst throw of the year already in the bag. He stared down a linebacker in the flat and then threw him the ball. It's one of those ones where you're like, how come you can't see the linebacker that's right in front of you? And I think there's a degree of sort of, not even excuse, but I think it's different when you're the difference in vertical depth between the linebacker that's right in your way and the dude you're trying to aim at, I think determines how easy it is to see that guy. So if you're looking at somebody 15 yards behind that linebacker, I think it's easier not to see him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because your brain's just focusing on a different depth area 15 yards away, and the sort of the thing in front acts as just a peripheral vision thing. But the closer that linebacker is to the guy you're trying to throw at, the less excusable it is to have not seen him. And Daniel Jones is just like looking out to the flat right at Frankie Louvu, and it's just like, nah, heave it. Throws it right to Louvu, drops the ball. And it's incomplete pass by the box score. One of the worst throws you're going to see this year.
He got away with that one for sure. To be fair, the leading receiver, do you know who the leading receiver is on the Giants through 2 weeks?
I don't. I know it isn't Kenny Golladay.
It's not Kenny Golladay.
What have you got?
Richie James.
Yeah.
Remember, he was a pretty cool player at Middle Tennessee State like 5 years ago, 6 years ago, whatever it was. I mean, he's throwing to Richie James, Tanner Hudson at tight end. Daniel Bellinger had a really nice catch and run yesterday, the rookie tight end for a touchdown. But it's not really the best group of playmakers as far as pass catchers go, but they're surviving so far in New York. Sterling Shepard is out there. Saquon Barkley still. He wasn't as explosive as he was in week 1, but credit the Giants for getting to 2-0 through 2 weeks here.
I don't understand why can't they assemble what looks like a pretty good group of playmakers on paper? Why can't they be on the field at the same time ever?
I don't know. I mean, on paper, it looks good.
Kenny Golladay had 2 receiving snaps. Kadarius Toney had 17. Like, what are we doing here? In addition to Daniel Jones having the worst throw of the season, and I don't mean the worst throw of the 2-week season, I mean the worst throw of the year that will stand for 17 games. There was that play where David Sills had a first down.
Throwing to David Sills
3 yards, and then somehow conspired not to have a first down at the end of the play. Stephen Ruiz, where does he work? The Ringer now? Stephen Ruiz had the picture. He was like, this did not end in a first down, and there was no fumble, because he was a good 2 yards over the first down line, and then just proceeded to run backwards instead of taking the first down.
I usually just say for our media colleagues, he works for the Ringer or the Athletic.
Yeah.
I usually just say both because I'm not sure which.
Uh-huh.
Because I question myself every single time. Is that Athletic? Or is that Ringer? Like Austin Gale. He's either the Ringer or the Athletic.
The late Austin Gale.
Rest in peace. So 1916, I don't have much else on this game.
No.
Giants are 2-0. And now they're headed for Monday Night Football against the Cowboys. The 2-0 Giants. First place Giants.
Against Cooper Rush.
Daniel Jones, Cooper Rush. Monday Night Football next week. The Micah Parsons show, which we'll talk about in a minute here. Maybe next.
Micah Parsons against Evan Neal isn't going to go well.
Evan Neal off to a slow start, but most rookie tackles are. But, credit the Giants.
Let's go to that game next then.
Let's do it now. Micah Parsons. See the MVP through 2 weeks. He's incredible. Dallas wins 20-17 against the Bengals.
We talked about Myles Garrett having, game-changing performances in both the first 2 weeks and how he's just absolutely dominated the guy that he's gone up against. And yet Myles Garrett is trailing in the wake of Micah Parsons in Defensive Player of the Year, standing right now. Micah Parsons is just wrecking house, and he's doing it against good players, largely. Like, he made Donovan Smith has turned into a good left tackle. He gave Donovan Smith like a 5 pass blocking grade before sending him out of the game injured. You know what I mean? Like, Donovan Smith didn't get injured it wasn't an unforced error. He didn't just randomly trip over and wreck his arm. He got barreled into a mound of bodies because Micah Parsons put him in a blender on that particular play. And he was doing it this week to Lyle Collins. And then he got bored with whooping Lyle Collins, moved to the other side of the line and started whooping Jonah Williams as well. He is just destroying people right now.
Yeah, I mean, is Micah Parsons the best pure edge rusher since Von Miller, since Khalil Mack? I mean, those guys in their absolute prime. I mean, Von Miller was probably a tick better than Khalil Mack as a pure pass rusher. Mack is a better run defender. But Parsons has to be right up there with those guys.
And this might be the start of seeing him deployed as a full-time edge rusher.
I think he had 3 linebacker snaps yesterday.
And week 1, it was like 20.
Yeah.
So at the start of the year, the question was, how are they going to deploy him? And are they actually going to end up sort of costing him opportunity by maintaining this pretense that he's an off-the-ball linebacker who happens to moonlight as the best pass rusher in the NFL? This week, it was like they went, you know what, to hell with it. He's an edge rusher. Let's stop screwing around with this. He's an edge rusher. Any snaps where he's not rushing the passer on the edge, we're just shooting ourselves in the foot for no good reason. We may have drafted him with visions of this off-the-ball linebacker thing, but no, forget it. We got it wrong. He's an edge rusher. Let's lean into that. That's what we saw this week. And if that continues now, if that's what he is from this point going forward, now we've got something. Because now he can dedicate all his time to that. Now we can see what happens when he's concentrating on nothing other than being an edge rusher. And I'm going to maintain this line that I've been using since last year. Very early in his career, he was getting comparisons to Lawrence Taylor, and they weren't crazy. That's the thing. Normally, I mean, that happens with any guy, any rookie playing out of his mind very early on. You get stupid comparisons to Hall of Fame players, and you're like, come on, let's not get carried away here. That's getting a bit silly. Micah Parsons was getting comps to Lawrence Taylor very early, and they weren't nuts. When you look at how Lawrence Taylor came in, just absolutely shocked the world and was playing at a different level of intensity and violence and physicality than the people that were trying to block him, that's what Micah Parsons looks like right now. It's not like these guys haven't seen elite pass rushers before, but he looks like he's playing at a lower level of football. When when you watch people in high school or people, in foreign leagues where there's a giant talent disparity, the people that are really good tend to play the game at a different level of physicality, and it surprises everybody else because you're just not used to people coming and hitting you at that level of, aggression and violence. Micah Parsons plays like that, except it's in the freaking NFL. That's not supposed to happen.
No. Through 2 weeks, 92.1 pass rushing grade. Myles Garrett is just above him at 92.8. You mentioned, though, Myles Garrett has gone up against some overmatched tackles through 2 weeks. So we're not necessarily adjusting the grades for competition. We're adding context to what the grades are. Here's my thing with Parsons, though. When he was left one-on-one, and again, I want to rehash, Leonard Fournette popped him as a chipper in week 1. It doesn't matter. Like that, Parsons is earning those double teams. He is at this point, much like Aaron Donald, if you leave him one-on-one, he will win, right? Pass rush win rate, you'll see these numbers floating around ESPN's and our win rate and all that stuff. The best edge rushers win about 20 to 25% of the time, right? Just pure wins because there's a lot of plays where the ball's out quick, whatever it might be. So it's higher than that if you parse it down into like straight dropbacks and the whole thing. But Parsons is really at the point where he's going to at least do something if you leave him one-on-one, either straight win to the outside or push the pocket or whatever it might be. And he's cleaned up with 4 sacks. That's the other thing too. Like sacks are sometimes overrated. We say don't just look at sack totals, but with Parsons, he is winning cleanly and then finishing immediately. His sacks are not overrated so far this year. When you leave him one-on-one, he's going to create a negative play.
His burst and acceleration to the quarterback after he makes the play is insane. And that's, again, it's very Lawrence Taylor-like. When that guy won, he was arriving at the quarterback with mean intentions. And, you watch, the highlight reel of Lawrence Taylor, and the impacts he's making on quarterbacks are some of the most painful-looking hits I've ever seen in the NFL. Because he's somehow the acceleration he has between beating the offensive lineman and getting to the quarterback is out of this world. Micah Parsons is at the same level. Remember the 40 time that he had, and he's gone in those NFL fastest man races. I think he won the one they had, right? Whatever that fake race thing was. He's an elite level speed and acceleration athlete who happens to be the size that he is. And when he beats an offensive lineman and gets 5-7 yards to run to hit the quarterback, he's arriving with some serious inertia attached to him, and that's going to hurt.
So here's why this was, so important. You have Joe Burrow on the other side with Cincinnati, and we know the offensive line narrative, but now we're 2 weeks in. He's been sacked 13 times in 2 games, 6 times yesterday. How much is on Joe Burrow? And at the end of the game, we saw that the Bucs in week 1 kind of had to adjust their game plan, right? They had to have an extra chipper. They had to get rid of the ball quickly. The Bengals in crunch time, where you have Joe Burrow, a Super Bowl caliber quarterback, and they're kind of afraid to throw the ball down the field. Yeah. They're afraid to have him hold the ball. They felt like they had to get the ball out of his hands. Micah Parsons was affecting the game even when he wasn't creating pressure. And that is the Lawrence Taylor comparison and the Aaron Donald. That is the game-changing performance that a Micah Parsons has.
It was a very tough game in terms of trying to analyze what's wrong with that Bengals pass blocking dynamic, because Joe Burrow's average time to throw was 2.5 seconds. It wasn't egregious. It's not like we were talking about a guy who was holding onto the ball forever and inviting pressure and those kinds of things. It was, and the pass protection didn't necessarily grade that badly. Lyle Collins is going to end up with a pretty rough grade, and he was the guy primarily getting killed by Micah Parsons. But it was when the pressure came, it was really fast. And then there were other occasions where Burrow was clearly affected by that. I mean, they gave up quite a lot of pressure, and it started to get to Burrow where he starts dancing around the pocket and trying, expecting it and those kinds of things. But the pressure when it came was so insanely disruptive, and there was just no way out for Burrow, and it ended up resulting in a sack almost every time, and then those are just killing drives, and the whole thing is spiraling out of control.
Yeah, they got to figure something out.
But for the first 2 weeks, I think we've seen a situation where, even though they have upgraded on their offensive line in these 3 spots. But we said all along that they didn't necessarily get good. They just got not terrible.
Yeah.
They did what we've preached for a long time, which is creep back toward average. The only problem with that strategy is that if that succeeds and you end up with an average offensive line, particularly if you do it the way they have, which is it's literally 5 average guys in theory. If you run up against some Micah Parsons, you're dead because 5 average guys can't block Micah Parsons.
I mean, how much is it that, and how much is it last year?
Or TJ Watt, by the way, which was the point I was making, which is like week 1 and week 2, they've gone up against guys that cannot be blocked by 5 average dudes.
How much is it just the way the Bengals offense was so predicated on the big plays last year? How impressed we were with Jamar Chase. Like when they needed a play, wow, how's he getting behind the defense? And then, oh, by the way, Jamar Chase can now take a slant to the house. We didn't know that he necessarily had that in the bag, but he can. And even though they have, Tyler Boyd and T. Higgins, who should be a couple good high-end possession receivers, right? They should be really good complements to Jamar Chase. Let Jamar Chase, because Chase doesn't have to be a high-volume guy. He doesn't have to be Justin Jefferson or Devontae Adams getting 15 to 20 targets. He could, but you have the ability to spread the wealth. The Bengals need to figure that out, and they need to figure out the short and the intermediate game when the explosives aren't there. And they've been inconsistent these first 2 weeks. Because there was many games last year where it's like the Bengals offense didn't make sense other than Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase just made a couple special plays. And when you rely on that, it becomes boom or bust. And so far, it's bust.
I mean, isn't that what we were saying again heading into the season, which is, okay, remember what they did last year. It was those big plays. It was explosive plays. If you looked at just where their offense ranked in a bunch of other statistical categories, it was middle of the pack. It wasn't even good. But they had Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow, and they made some insane plays at key moments. Like Kansas City, 3rd and 27. If 3rd and 27 doesn't happen, we're not talking about the Bengals being this insane Super Bowl unstoppable force. All of a sudden, those plays aren't there anymore. And they might come back, right? But we've gone from the high end of variance to the bottom end of variance for the first 2 weeks. And maybe that is the difference of trying to block a Micah Parsons or a TJ Watt. But for the moment, the explosive big plays that were the thing that carried this offense last year are simply not even there anymore. And now you've gone from an offense that was average, or you've gone from a situation that was average as a baseline to now it's below average because you don't have the big plays, and they're just kind of getting their ass kicked. And now they get out-dueled by Cooper Rush.
Part of the reason why we don't overreact is the Bengals went to the Super Bowl last year in a year where we were talking about these issues, right? They had a terrible game where they lost to the Jets, and they had other games where they looked horrible. It looked like they were throwing the season away, but they bounced back. So I'm not ready to give up on the Bengals because I still believe in Joe Burrow as a quarterback. I think Jamar Chase as a receiver. They're still extremely talented. But this offense has to get rid of the nothing plays. There are too many runs to nowhere, too many negative plays, the sacks. There needs to be better rhythm with Burrow, the short, intermediate game, and then let Chase create down the field when needed, right? Other reasons to not overreact. Jamar Chase literally scored a touchdown last week that was just not challenged.
Yeah.
And it wasn't. I mean, that's on the Bengals. They didn't challenge it.
There's also an inch away from another one.
Yeah. I mean, so it is an absolute fine line that has the Bengals at 0-2.
Yeah.
But there's also massive concerns for the way the offense is playing. And what Joe Burrow just can't take all these hits. He has to play differently. He defended his way of playing last year.
Yeah.
And to me, that's a little bit of a warning sign, right? Because I don't think he's Aaron Rodgers or Russell Wilson, or whichever quarterback can handle getting sacked 4 to 5 times a game, right? Those guys have done it throughout their career because it does complement their playing style. Joe Burrow's not this outside of structure magician. He's got a couple good plays, but not like a Rodgers or a Russell Wilson or a Mahomes. And Mahomes doesn't get sacked; he just creates the plays. That shouldn't be Burrow's playing style. He should be the guy that's picking you apart, and then every now and again he'll create out of structure when needed.
Well, he made a lot of sense when he defended that methodology of playing and the reason that he takes more sacks and blah blah blah. But it is one of those arguments where you have to make that argument from a position of strength, which to his credit he was. He was coming off this season where he just went to the Super Bowl and everything was working and the big plays and blah blah blah. But now that argument starts to look dumb. It's like when Arthur Smith came out of the game yesterday and was asked, why did Kyle Pitts barely feature in the game? He was like, hey, this isn't fantasy football. We're trying to win games here. To which the obvious comeback is, okay, and the result of the game was? It's like you can't, that argument doesn't work if you lose. That argument only works if you win. So for Burrow, you can only kind of make that argument of, hey, this is how I play the game. I'm going to make, I'm going to make these plays, and I'm going to lean into this methodology because, if I just throw the ball away, we have to punt anyway, and it's bad. Like, okay, but you lost. Like, you lost to Cooper Rush. So, all right, you lost to Cooper Rush and you got sacked 6 times, and the obvious problem was those sacks. So you now need to start thinking, all right, that's not working. I need to change this. Somebody, by the way, I think I can't even remember who came up with this, but we've had debate over the time Joe Burrow has been in the NFL. Does he officially qualify as a ginger, or is he just the most ginger-looking, brown-haired person you've ever seen in your life? I could argue in this game that he was simply exposed by a true ginger in Cooper Rush.
Yeah.
And therefore his powers went away, and Cooper Rush got all the juice.
Pretty sure Cooper stole all the ginger talent in his one start. Was it Halloween last year?
In Minnesota, yeah.
Yeah. Because I think Darnold probably imploded that day, and Wentz imploded, whatever it was, and Cooper Rush stole all of it.
Uh-huh.
I mean, Cooper Rush is now the greatest fourth-quarter comeback quarterback in NFL history. He's 2 for 2, 100% fourth-quarter comeback rate in his career. Cooper Rush.
That's a good percentage.
I know Phil Simms said, Cooper Rush is as good as Dak, and everybody dunked on him.
I mean, in 2022, so far, it's true.
So far, he has been.
Yeah.
So the nuance I'll bring to the table. I don't agree that Cooper Rush is better than Dak Prescott.
Okay.
I will say in week 2, the Dallas offense looked a little bit better this week than they did last week. Cooper Rush unlocked Noah Brown, former Ohio State top recruit here. 5 catches, 91 yards, and a score. CeeDee Lamb had 7 catches. I thought Tony Romo kind of described Rush pretty well, where he had some pretty good moments in his game last year against the Vikings, and in this game kind of disappeared for a bit, and then, oh, by the way, let's just make a few throws down the stretch and get into field goal range. So, credit the Cowboys, and I think having a Micah Parsons, a dude on that side, is going to keep the Cowboys in games.
I mean, yeah, we're reaching the point now where the hyperbole surrounding Micah Parsons might not be able to go high enough. We're already reaching the point where if you say he's the best edge rusher in the NFL, people are like, well, yeah. It's not controversial anymore. Like, he's reaching that Aaron Donald plane of there's almost nothing you can say that's so insane that people take a step back from it. The only thing that's stopping me saying he's the best pass rusher in the NFL is the fact that Aaron Donald exists. And Donald is that guy. I'm sorry, but he just is, even if he's a different position and an interior guy rather than an edge rusher. But if you limit it to edge rushers, and remember, this edge rusher encompasses a position group that includes Myles Garrett and TJ Watt, amongst others. There are a lot of very good edge rushers in the NFL right now, and it isn't nuts to say that Micah Parsons is the best of them. After a year of which 40% of his time has been spent as an off-the-ball linebacker.
Yeah, I think we can officially move him to edge probably in our season positions. I think we will.
Yeah.
I think we'll have to do that. Cowboys 20, Bengals 17. Bengals move to 0-2. Cowboys to 1-1. Let's go. Let's touch on the Rams quickly here. 31-27. Rams over the not quickly, but give them their love. Rams 31. Falcons 27. The Falcons with the backdoor cover here.
Yes.
Blocked punt for a touchdown.
They almost came all the way back.
The Falcons so close. They were down 28-3. They almost made it back.
They were down 28-3.
Right?
Yeah. They almost exorcised the demons.
That would have salvaged everything.
Oh, yeah. That would have been exactly the same as a Super Bowl win.
Matthew Stafford having the weirdest season. What's his incompletion total now? Like 15? And 5 of them are interceptions so far.
Terrible.
And there could have been more in there. The Rams offense is doing a great job. I mean, I know Cooper Kupp has a fumble at the end to help let the Falcons back into the game, but they are still creating way. Cooper Kupp being awesome, schematically just getting Cooper Kupp into space. I mean, there are just a lot of completions to be had right now in this Rams offense, and it's like Stafford, he's taking them, and every now and again it's like, I got to make a play, and those are turning into the interceptions right now. They can come back to bite, They didn't come back to bite necessarily yesterday, but let the Falcons back into the game.
Yeah, his adjusted completion rate in this game was like 80%, but he had 3 turnover-worthy plays.
Yeah, that was kind of his Bills game. It was a lot of underneath stuff, and then did you see the Stafford sidearm pass that snuck through too?
No.
I mean, it was dropped in the end zone. I think it was Tyler Higbee, but he threw the ball almost underhand, not like a Mahomes underhand, but like low arm slot around a defender, probably from the 3-yard line, and it snuck in as like a low pass that got it was awesome. I mean, I love watching Stafford play, but yeah, he's got to stop throwing the ball to the defense. I know we've said that a little bit.
We've said that for his entire NFL career.
But the game got sealed. Marcus Mariota had to take a shot, throws it up. I thought Bryan Edwards would.
They went to him too early. You got to get to overtime before.
It was the fourth quarter, though.
No. It's
the
auto.
Stats.
Overtime TO.
Oh, okay. I got you.
You got to wait till you get to overtime before you employ Bryan Edwards.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're asking for problems.
Jalen Ramsey picked it off to seal the deal for the Rams.
Great pick. That's the best play Jalen Ramsey's made in a long time.
Yeah. Went up and got it. Looked good. Kyle Pitts, that was the question you said for Arthur Smith. Why is he not getting any targets? He only had 3.
3 targets. Drake London, the rookie, 11 targets, 8 catches.
London looked good. Had a 2-point
touchdown.
conversion in there, right? I mean, Drake London looked good. He's looking good.
Yeah.
That's why the Falcons, they do have an intriguing group of pass catchers when you throw Kyle Pitts in there, but he has just not been targeted to this point.
And by the way, week 2, but this looks like it's another year where we're going to get a good crop of rookie receivers. I mean, Drake London looks very good. Garrett Wilson looks very good.
Chris Olave, I think, is going to be good.
This, I think, is another group where you're going to look at the end of it and be like, there's a lot of receivers that came out of this
Dotson, yeah.
and looked very impressive.
Yes, more good receivers entering the NFL.
And immediate translations, not like, hey, we're going to wait 2 or 3 years to see if this guy's any good. It's like, no, we're seeing immediately that these guys can still play.
The Rams are up 28-3. The Falcons snuck back into the game. Disappointing game. Arthur Smith is saying, hey, we're trying to win. We're not trying to win fantasy. I mean, again, I'm pretty much anti-Twitter dunking, and I just saw a lot of dunking on that quote. I get what he's saying. Yeah. He's like, I'm not. So on one hand, it's like I'm not specifically trying to feed this one player. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, the guy was drafted number 4 overall at tight end. At the position's called tight end, even if he plays wide receiver. And if you believe in him, if he is a very good playmaker. He had a really nice rookie season, and this is usually when you take that next step for guys that are called tight ends, even if they play receiver. I would find more ways to get the ball to Kyle Pitts. Not that you have to not that you have to completely change your scheme or anything like that, but you have Drake London now. There's potential if you feed Pitts a little bit more.
Yeah.
But I get the quote. I get it.
But also, he's testy with the media in the first couple of weeks already.
Yeah.
And it's like, again, if you're going to be like that, you kind of have to make sure that the things you're saying are airtight and can't be immediately countered with, okay, but you didn't win.
Was he saying that they got buried, that you guys buried us back in May or whatever it was to the media?
Yeah.
They're 0-2.
Yeah. But they've been feisty.
Not as feisty as the Texans.
Yeah, the Texans were very feisty.
Let's go to the Texans. Denver Broncos 16, Houston Texans 9. Texans are feisty. Feisty pass rush and everything. So what I wanted to do, there's a lot of booze in Denver.
Yeah.
There's a lot of booze in Denver. And what I wanted to do, because again, I hate Twitter. I hate it, but I'm on there, right? I hate it. And everybody's like reporting Russell Wilson's getting booed.
Yeah.
The Denver Broncos are getting booed.
Yeah.
Nathaniel Hackett's getting booed. What I really wanted to do was interview Broncos fans after the game and say, where are your boos directed? Because we don't know. How can you add commentary
to
boos?
Survey the entire crowd on the way out.
Yes, I wanted to survey the crowd and say, who are you directing the boos at? Because I think that is misinformation. If you go to Twitter and you say, Russell Wilson's getting booed.
Okay, yeah.
That's misinformation. If you say,
fake news,
the Broncos offense is getting booed, that kind of encapsulates it.
Yeah.
If you say Nathaniel Hackett's getting booed, you could, infer a little bit, but you don't know for sure.
Yeah.
Unless you interview and talk to Broncos fans.
Here's the thing.
I don't think it was Russ getting booed, but this offense was getting booed because they couldn't put it into the end zone.
I mean, I'm willing to stipulate that it's not Russell Wilson as the direction of the ire at the moment. I will say, though, that the general status of the Denver offense is sinking further and further into farce. And this game was There was some horrific stuff happening in this game. I have never seen this before, but the home crowd was chanting down the play clock late in the game so that Denver didn't delay a game again. Yeah. As soon as it hit 10, the crowd is going 10, 9, 8, just so they didn't screw it up. That's insane. Now look, it's actually helpful. You know, well done. Like for a spontaneous collection of thousands of people to collectively come to that as a solution to the problem here.
That should be a thing.
Is actually really impressive for a humanitarian achievement. That's actually quite laudable. But I genuinely don't think I've ever seen that before, where the crowd is trying to stop the offense delay of gaming by chanting down the play clock as it counts down. And the fact that needed to happen is mind-blowing. When you look at some of the stuff that happened in this game, it's so bad. And it's stuff that, like, okay, it's very hard to figure out exactly what the coach does and does not have direct individual responsibility for in terms of the product on the field. I mean, ultimately, he's responsible for all of it because he's the head coach. But, like, sometimes a coach gets screwed by things that are happening that aren't really his fault, but he's going to take the fall for it because he's the coach. But some of the things that are happening in Denver are very, coachy. It's like, why are you giving away so many ridiculous penalties? Why is there a seemingly confusion about whether you're going to kick a field goal or not? So 3rd and 1, okay? With 3rd and short, this is a fairly standard protocol in the NFL. What are we going to do? Well, one of the things you're probably not going to do is use a tight end on a speed option to the flat. And that got buried, like, fairly obviously. So then you decide to kick a long field goal.
That's Andrew Beck. I think it was his first or second career carry.
Yeah. So, okay, he gets buried, loss of yardage. So, all right, we'll kick the long field goal. We've gained this out from last week. We'll kick the long field goal. Only you spent so long dithering about whether to kick the long field goal or not. Now you're running out of time, so it's delay a game. So now the long field goal just became it became a really long field goal. Well, we missed the last one of those we attempted, so punt the ball instead. It's like, what just happened? You had 3rd and 1, and you turned that into a punt by losing yardage and then dithering and costing yourself even more yardage.
I think I said it last week. I just want to reiterate. It seems easy from here, and I'm not absolving Nathaniel Hackett. I'm saying when you're trying to find a head coach, it is tough to predict how well they're going to do that stuff. The game is fast. I remember baseball manager Terry Francona. Baseball, the slowest game in the world, saying the game is fast. The game of baseball is fast when you're the manager, right? Because you have to anticipate, when do I bring this pitcher in? What if they do this? What if they pinch hit? Like, there are moves that you have to anticipate in a slow game like baseball. Yeah. And then you multiply that by 1,000 and it's football.
The game of baseball it rivals cricket for being the slowest game I've ever seen in my life. And cricket is a game that takes multiple days.
No, it doesn't rival cricket. But all I'm saying is the actual decision-making and all that stuff in baseball is like, it's kind of bang-bang, right? You have to have some anticipation. In football, it's that much more. And we talked about this earlier on the show, like, how do you practice all of these situations? Well, I think the Broncos need to do more of it. I mean, as much as you can have the head coach sit down and practice these situations, when you're in the thick of it, it is going fast. And the only way you get out of that is to be better prepared.
By the way, one more goof in the game. Denver gets a defensive stop on a series, then forgets to send out the punt returner. The punt return team went out, just absent the punt returner, forcing them to burn the second time out late. I mean, again, it's like, okay, is that really Nathaniel Hackett's responsibility? Probably not. On the other hand, why are all these things happening to one guy?
Yeah.
So, okay, it's like Russell Wilson isn't playing out of his mind. All the jokes are flying around Twitter yesterday about, hey, here's what Russ is cooking up. Hot pockets as far as the eyes can see, all those kinds of things.
That's your joke.
I mean, that one was mine, but
yeah,
there were a lot of other ones. There were like pictures of some horrendous meals that people had cobbled together. It's like, hey, here's Russ cooking. But if I'm looking for where does the largest portion of the pie of responsibility and blame lie right now through 2 weeks for Denver, it's coaching. I mean, this is this is some bad stuff that's happening here, and I don't think that much of it is Russell Wilson's fault right now.
And Hackett's had good moments as an offensive coordinator. You know, he was excellent in Green Bay and all that stuff. He's been good. But it's a whole different dynamic when you're managing the game, when you're the head coach. And so far, it has not looked good. It has not looked good for Denver. The Russ is cooking stuff, the update here, he's dropped back over 40 times twice.
Which is already an outlier.
Yeah, last year he had 2 of those games. He was hurt. In 2020, where they did let him cook a little bit, he had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 of those games, maybe 10. So 2020 was like the one year where they unleashed him a little bit. But so far, 2 for 2 here in Denver, and not because of like crazy game script or anything, right?
No.
This was in close games.
Yeah,
this was by design. And the Broncos offense looks terrible overall. They ran the ball pretty well yesterday, which is part of why people didn't want them to hand the ball to Andrew Beck on 3rd and 1. Melvin Gordon and Javonte Williams did a pretty nice job, but a lot of inconsistencies here. Jerry Jeudy gets hurt. Him and Patrick Surtain both out.
Did we get an up? That looked a lot like a popped collarbone.
Yeah. When you think about how skinny Jeudy is and you see how hard he hit the ground, it did.
They reported it as a shoulder injury and very quickly downgraded him to out. It looked a lot like a collarbone to me, to Dr. Monson over here.
You are the, yeah.
Oh, I got so they were, you remember the Justin Herbert injury late in the game against Kansas City, way back in Thursday night, like a month and a half ago.
Did you diagnose that on the spot?
No. I mean, look, the Chargers, even after the game, were like, well, we got to check and make sure he didn't just get the wind knocked out of him. I'm like, I think we can cross that one off. Like, I think you can rule out the wind got knocked out of him.
Gotta hope it's just a sprain, Jim.
Right. I mean, look, I'm no doctor over here, but I think there's a lot of people that could immediately rule out he just got the wind knocked out of him, right? And then, like, the next day, it's like, hey, he
got the ribs knocked out of him.
Well, it was reported as he broke cartilage. So I texted my dad. I was like, does one break cartilage as opposed to tear it? I mean, cartilage is the sort of, the rubbery substance that, rather than, it doesn't break. And he was like, it probably means the point where the cartilage attaches to the actual bone, the rib, that's what's like broken apart. I didn't get a prognosis or a timeout or anything, but I just qualified what exactly had happened to him.
Looked painful, I'll say that.
Yeah. So anyway, the old man was able to explain the broke versus tear element of it. I didn't check whether Jerry Jeudy popped the collarbone from him, though.
Can we get your dad to be like the Dr. Chow or something? Like, can we get him to
like dial-in consultant?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we've tried that here at PFF.
I mean, he's going to be retiring soon. We could probably give him a spot, give him a segment.
We did that with Dr. Pomerantz a few years ago. We can get your dad on here.
Yeah, just dial him in.
Yeah.
What do you make of this one?
Yeah. But like, don't give him any prep either. Just like throw the video up and say, tell me on the spot.
What do you think happened?
Yeah. Be confident about it. Just speak confidently. Doesn't matter. Denver's defense actually could be pretty good too, by the way. We had some concerns I had some concerns with Vic Fangio going, but through 2 games, they've done a pretty nice job. Bad first half against the Seahawks, but since then.
And they were missing a few players in this one. I mean, like you said, did you say Patrick Surtain?
I said Surtain, yep.
So Surtain missed half the game at least. They didn't have the rookie Nick Bonito, who's one of their better situational pass rushers going into it. He was inactive. So missing a couple of players, Denver's defense was able to do well. Now, look, it's the Texans who weren't supposed to be any good. So, let's set expectations here. But it did do well.
I just want to say, too, it's not like we've never seen Russ kind of trudge through 3 quarters and then make a big-time throw at the end. He did.
I mean, that's kind of that's his MO.
Yeah, he's done that plenty of times throughout his career. Had the 22-yard touchdown, good throw for the game winner.
I do kind of think, this whole what does an offense look like that best maximizes Russell Wilson's unique skill set and playing style? It kind of feels like you should just throw everything out except like drop back and moonball. Yeah. Just 4 deep every play. Pick your favorite. I mean, if Russell Wilson has 4 attempts at a deep shot, isn't he going to hit on one of them?
Yeah.
Just make that the offense.
That's how college teams play.
Right. That's your entire passing offense. And then all that you have to do is decide when they're backing up too much and hand the ball off to Javonte Williams or Melvin Gordon up the middle. Take 8 yards. It's the Mike Leach offense, except instead of slants, it's go balls.
Yeah.
That's what we're running here. There you go. I fixed it for you.
Just throw go balls left and right.
4 deep, and then an occasion, once they give you a 5-man box, there's the handoff up the middle to Javonte Williams.
Broncos fixed. All right. Broncos are hosting.
And then ideally on 3rd and short, don't not the speed option of the tight end.
Tight end / fullback. All right, so the Broncos are going to host the San Francisco 49ers next Sunday night football. The Niners win 27-7 against the Seahawks yesterday. Of course, the big story, Trey Lance, broken ankle, is it? Either way, he's out for the season. Jimmy Garoppolo comes in, plays like Jimmy Garoppolo in the win. But, man, after all offseason talking about Trey Lance, what he's going to do, the big play potential that he's going to bring to the table here, we just never got to see it. And we're back to Jimmy Garoppolo leading still a pretty good Niners team. What are your thoughts?
I mean,
sad for Lance.
Yeah, I feel sorry for Trey Lance, and I'm sad that we're not going to get to see Trey Lance this season. I mean, for better or worse, whether it was going to go well or badly, it would have given us some clarity on the situation as to what exactly that's going to be going forward. Now
we have no Trey Lance data points.
That's what I mean. Now Trey Lance is going to go into his third season, and we have no earthly idea whether he can start or not. They gave 3 first-round picks for this guy while they had Jimmy Garoppolo, and it's going to get further complicated. Like, if Jimmy Garoppolo plays well this year, what the hell are they going to do? So
Trey Lance only had 319 dropbacks at the FCS level.
Yeah.
132 at the NFL. We're talking about 450 dropbacks
of
for
like
Trey Lance.
Totality evidence for his football playing life.
Yes, because we don't have the JUCO film.
True.
So between FCS and the NFL, Trey Lance is going to go into year 3 with about 450 dropbacks under his belt.
Which is nothing.
Yeah.
Like, that's
he hasn't
2/3 of an NFL season.
He hasn't played great yet, but I kept prefacing it by, he'll throw it to the defense, but the big plays will be there, right? He had the 2 big time throws in week 1. That's what he'd been bringing to the table that Jimmy Garoppolo had not. I think Garoppolo is going to go in and run the offense the same way. Shanahan has an incredible record with Garoppolo as his starter, and the 49ers are going to be one of the better teams. But Trey Lance had the opportunity to put them over the hump.
And this is why you re-sign Jimmy G to that deal. Okay, yes.
That is what I said to do, right? Instead of trading. That was the one thing I said that the Niners could do. And now they had to restructure his contract to do that. But I think at this point,
it was the right move. This is the other element. So there's this sort of debate as to, is needing to turn back to Garoppolo because Trey Lance plays badly worth the trade-off of the feel stuff, the pressure that he adds. But then the extra element on your side is, there's also, what if Trey Lance gets hurt? What if you have to turn to the backup, not because the starter is playing badly, but because the starter just breaks his ankle? Now the decision is made for you. You have to go in that direction. So that is what they've ended up doing. And 3 draft picks later, they're right back where they started. But it's better than having to turn to Brock Purdy as your starting quarterback because Trey Lance went down.
Seattle only scored on blocked field goal for a touchdown. So Seattle's offense essentially shut down. The Niners defense looked good in week 1 in the rainstorm, looked really good again. A little bit of rain in San Francisco, but the Niners defense, remember all the people that were telling us, hey, watch out, Niners defense. Might have been right.
Yeah, I think we saw in this game that, remember how much of the weather was going to be a thing in week 1, and it's going to be a different 49ers defense in week 2 where they don't have to deal with a sloppy field and, Nick Bosa can just tee off and actually get a ton of pressure and those kinds of things.
Talanoa Hufanga. You get that right?
Yeah.
49ers safety. He was a 2021 5th rounder. One of the stories of the season so far. Got a 90-plus grade at safety. He had, he played last year. He was fine. He's just flying around, man. He is making plays. It does seem like every time the Niners are making a big play defensively, he's breaking up a pass and just wreaking havoc on the back end at safety. So he's been #fun to watch and playing some really good ball right now for the Niners.
Yeah, he made a couple of run stops. It felt a lot like Seattle was telegraphing what they were doing a little bit too much yesterday. Like, he made a couple of plays that were run stops where it only works if you have no other responsibility on the play. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you essentially run blitzed. And if it had been anything other than a run in the direction you were running, things mightn't have been quite so beneficial as a defensive result.
I don't want to make a lazy comp and say, that's Troy Polamalu, because Polamalu flew around like
and he
that
spent an entire
type of
career
stuff.
getting it right every time. So it's sort of, you reach a point where everything looks like a gamble, but at some point you can't possibly be batting 1,000 gambling the whole way. Therefore, you assume it has to be tape study or knowledge or whatever it is. For a guy, maybe he's the same in terms of maybe he knew every single one of these from tape study and just understanding a situation and down distance, etc. The alternative explanation is that Seattle's offense is telegraphing what it's doing a little bit too much, and it's too obvious that was what was coming.
Yeah, as I said, Denver's off defense since the first half against Seattle, while Seattle's offense since their first half on Monday Night Football last week, not good. Not good at all. Geno Smith, a lot of dink and dunk underneath type stuff. DK Metcalf, 4 catches for 35 yards. They're just not connecting with DK down the field. They're not taking advantage of those.
Yeah, they connected on him in that one bomb that got taken away for illegal man downfield.
Right.
So it was like the play action thing. It was like a play action fake screen or fake outside zone or something. And I think both tackles.
The lineman was blocking.
Yeah. So I think it was both tackles. But Abraham Lucas was the guy that was further along and therefore drew the flag. Yeah, he was blocking a guy and ends up like shoving him loose. And apparently once the block disconnects, you can take a guy and drive him 10 yards downfield if it's a pass play, and you can be 10 yards beyond the line of scrimmage. As long as you're still connected with the guy that you started blocking at the line of scrimmage, it's not illegal man downfield. The point where you disengage the block, then you become illegal. So Lucas drove his guy a couple of yards off the line of scrimmage, then disconnected, and he was 3 or 4 yards downfield. But I think it was Charles Cross on the other side was also downfield. Anyway, either way, that was a bomb where DK Metcalf made a spectacular catch over a DB. It gets negated and taken back.
Ross Dwelley was your tin cup guy this week. Just schemed open for a 38-yard touchdown, wide open. So Shanahan's still creating those plays. Jeff Wilson, really nice job running the ball yesterday for the Niners. But Jimmy Garoppolo, man, I mean, what's the key here for the Niners and Jimmy Garoppolo? I think we know what we're going to get from him. But all we said last year is, dude, stop throwing the ball to the defense. He's got to cut down on the turnover-worthy plays. If he does that, the Niners will have a good offense again.
Well, he's got to do that, and then the other thing he's got to do is stay healthy. I mean, remember,
that too, because he's only stayed healthy a few seasons.
You can make an argument that the single biggest problem with Jimmy Garoppolo as a starting quarterback is the fact that you can't rely on him being healthy for the entire season, and that alone is a reason to go after an upgrade or a contingency plan or whatever Trey Lance was. Now you got to rely on him for almost the entire season because Trey Lance is gone, and your only other alternative is Brock Purdy. I mean, maybe now is the time for them to make some contingency moves. Maybe Brock Purdy isn't the quarterback, the next backup, the next man up for the foreseeable future. Like maybe they go looking for a better alternative.
All right, 2 more games, man. Arizona Cardinals 29, Las Vegas Raiders 23. The Raiders were up 23-7 at one point. The Cardinals, what just an insane comeback by the Cardinals here. They had, was it 2 2-point conversions?
Yeah, I think so.
2 of the most ridiculous 2-point conversions you'll ever see.
Yeah.
So they get back into it to go to, it was 23-7. Cardinals score a touchdown. Kyler Murray runs for the 2-point conversion after about 20 seconds.
21 seconds in which he covered 84 yards, according to, I think it was NGS.
Yeah.
He ran around and covered 84 yards on a 2-point conversion.
So that makes it 23-15. Kyler scrambles for another touchdown to get within 2. And then they go for 2 again. And this was after a 5-yard penalty moves them to the 7 with the game on the line. Need to get the 2-point conversion, and Kyler Murray throws an absolute dime to A.J. Green in the back of the end zone. Nice catch by A.J. Green to haul it in. That ties the game at 23. You get into overtime. Hunter Renfrow fumbles in overtime. Isaiah Simmons, the redemption story. After getting torched week 1 by Travis Kelce and the Chiefs, Simmons was benched early. I mean, he just wasn't playing much yesterday.
14 snaps.
How many what was the total?
14.
14 snaps. So he goes from starter to basically role player here. Forces the fumble on Hunter Renfrow. Byron Murphy returns it. Almost goes full Deshaun Jackson at the goal line. Almost drops it too early. I don't get it. And the Cardinals with a walk-off fumble return touchdown in overtime to win 29-23.
Yeah, and they also, remember, we were saying there were 2 plays yesterday. There was one on Sunday Night Football, and there was one in this game where it was a deep pass. It was caught by the receiver who got 2 feet down and then immediately got blasted, and the ball came firing
So
out.
Aaron Jones for the Packers last night, Marquise Brown for the Cardinals.
Yeah.
You're saying.
And on the Marquise Brown one, it was immediately called an incomplete pass, and we moved on. And then the one last night, it was like, no, he got 2 feet down, he was moving, it's a complete pass and a fumble. You're like, whoa. I mean, these are almost identical. Either they're both catches or they're both. But it was interesting how, like, immediately decisive the decision was on both those. Like, that Marquise Brown one was immediately called an incomplete. No, he never held for long enough. And nobody questioned it. It was just like, all right. I mean, I was like, okay, I mean, there's 2 feet down and he's turning. Like, we can debate when this football move thing actually starts and what is required, but that's pretty close to a really important catch deep down the sideline.
Oh man, there was the Raiders had this game in hand.
Yeah,
for most of it. They couldn't. It was Mac Hollins breaking out. This was when they weren't going to Darren Waller or Devontae Adams only had 7 targets. He did get in the end zone.
2 catches.
Yeah, just 2 catches. But this was,
and his touchdown was it was a pick play.
It was a pick, right? They set it up for him. But this was good. Last week we were saying don't force it too much to him. And so when I saw Mac Hollins, a guy I liked like 6 years ago for North Carolina, but when you see Mac Hollins making plays, I'm thinking, okay, this is Derek Carr not forcing the ball to Devontae Adams, going to his 3rd and 4th option, and that's good. That's like a good long-term thing for the Raiders because there will be games where Devontae Adams takes over. But the problem with Oakland, I almost said Oakland, with Vegas was just putting it away. When you get up 23-7, not sustaining offense after the fact.
By the way, I do mean it was a pick play. I mean,
legit.
Mac Hollins
it was illegal.
He engaged early and drove the guy a yard in the end zone.
Yeah.
I mean, it was pass interference. Like
Was it within a yard? The initial contact?
Ooh, it might have been actually.
It was close.
He might have been okay with that rule.
Yeah, it wasn't like Devontae Adams,
but either way,
slick route running or anything like that.
Absolutely schemed up touchdown, if you like.
The Cardinals defense looked a little bit better with J.J. Watt there. Last week, the Cardinals defense there was a point, their first 6 quarters of football
looked terrible.
Embarrassing bad. Tackling the space that offenses had to operate and all of that stuff. They did do a better job in the second half. And then it's so funny, like offensively for the Cardinals, remember the big story was like, what's the air raid going to do in the NFL? And now I think I finally figured out it's just let Kyler drop back, run around, and make plays. Well, that's what it became, right? At the end, this wasn't the air raid. I'm not saying this is the only way Kyler played, but that's what it became at the end there, was Kyler just run around. He was the only guy I've ever written in a scouting report where I was like, I don't care that he looks at the rush. Yeah. He should look at the rush, right? He needs to, because he can navigate it, and he's so quick that he's going to create those plays, and I think you saw some of that yesterday.
He, on the 2-point conversion where he ran around for 21 seconds and 84 yards, etc. Okay, they only rushed 3 to get him in the first place, but the 2 of them basically stopped rushing because they got tired. It wasn't like, I mean, he ran around for so long that a couple of 300-pound dudes were like, all right, this has become an endurance play. I'm out. Like, I operate in sprints only. We've crossed over into the endurance events. Like, we've gone past, whatever the line is in athletics, the 800 meters, where it becomes like a feat of endurance rather than a long sprint. That's what's happened here. We've gone over into the 800 meters, 1,500 meters. I'm 330 pounds. I'm not doing this anymore. I'm just going to lean on the offensive lineman for a while until the pain ends. Like, that's what happened in that play. He is incredibly good at that stuff. I mean, he's so quick, so fast. His change of direction and stuff is good. And that low center of gravity, the fact that he's tiny, I mean, it's a factor in those plays. He's very, I mean, the second one, or the second sort of scrambly, crazy play later, where Max Williams had him. Max Williams sacked him, and then he's so small.
Crosby.
Yeah. He's so small, low to the ground, that he just kind of bent over, and Crosby lost him. You know what I mean? He just slipped out of his grasp. That's a factor of being that small. It's really hard to corral a guy that's like that.
It is. If you're a defensive player playing Kyler Murray, Lamar has a little bit of this, but it's really the guys who are slippery breaking out.
You want a good metaphor?
Always.
You remember the scene where Rocky's trying to chase a chicken down?
Yeah.
It's kind of what it's like trying to catch Kyler Murray.
I used that before. I used that for I don't know if it was Kyler.
There used to be a commercial where John Randall was trying to chase a chicken. It was a chicken with Brett Favre's jersey on it.
Yeah, I remember that.
Same thing. That's what
I
it
may
feels
have used
like.
that for Mahomes before.
But because Kyler's
Well, I heard
it does seem a lot like a chicken running around.
Somebody
the yard.
retweeted a line from a different Kyler Murray scouting report yesterday. That was like he runs like a toddler who just ran away with your phone. And I just want to say
that's
they're slippery.
outstanding.
I got a metaphor.
That's a really
I'm on
good.
the metaphor board.
It's not yours though. You just repeated somebody else's
With
metaphor.
an exclamation.
Yeah.
What?
That's a really good metaphor.
Look, I need to catch up so I can steal
That's
some.
one of my favorite metaphors ever. I was telling Gordon this, that my favorite one I've ever heard anybody use was a soccer metaphor. And, Lionel Messi.
Yeah.
Even you will know Lionel Messi. Arguably, the greatest player ever.
Tom Brady of football.
When he was in his pump in Barcelona, him and Dani Alves in particular used to just play 1-2s the whole way. Like he'd pass to Dani Alves and then he'd run, and Dani Alves would immediately pass it back, and they just go 1-2, 1-2, 1-2, 1-2 through everybody. Right? It was absurd. When Dani Alves left and the sort of next generation of Barcelona players were there, Messi would still play these 1-2s, but the guy on the other end wouldn't get the message and would just take the ball and go do something else with it. And this guy described it as, remember in The Simpsons when they're playing Frisbee with Santa's little helper, and the ball would just like ricochet off his face?
Sure.
You just stand there. It was like, that was like the other Barcelona players when Lionel Messi's playing these 1-2s. They would just like let it hit them. And it was like, huh? They just didn't get it. I think that's the finest metaphor I've ever heard in my life.
Right up there with Kyler.
But the Kyler as a toddler running away with your phone is a good one too. Even right down to how he holds the ball, like out here as he's running. Ooh.
Oh my gosh, I know. It's that saved Arizona's season, right? They've got the Rams next week. The Cardinals were in danger of staring 0-3.
Doesn't that so this is a little bit like the Russell Wilson thing where it's so hard to design an offense that's that. Like, how can you create an offense that's just, hey, Kyler, drop back and make something happen? Which is essentially what you're asking him to do in those situations. It worked. The tricky situation for them is that the best thing they can do might be essentially to just let Kyler ad-lib an offense. Just say, hey, here's the basic structure, but if you feel for a second that you need to make something else happen, just go nuts. That's a really difficult thing.
It's just so
to
inconsistent.
sustain.
It's just so inconsistent. And DeAndre Hopkins will be back at some point. And when he's there, and AJ Green caught the 2-point conversion, but he also had a bunch of near catches that should have been there. AJ Green's just not finishing plays, right? Take the pressure off of AJ Green, and you have Marquise Brown. Zach Ertz isn't moving the same way he was before. You see him trying to make moves in space. It's just not there. Greg Dortch can ball, by the way. I think the slot receiver out of Wake Forest.
He's a good player.
He had their lone touchdown. I mean, they've got all the ingredients there. It is a tough balance, though, trying to figure out how do you incorporate some pretty decent playmakers when Nuke is back, decent playmakers with Kyler Murray's natural playmaking ability. Because Kyler will also take more sacks that are his fault.
Yeah.
Right? So you take the negative with
It's
the good.
inconsistent, but I think it's also a very difficult thing to augment and build around. Like in an ideal situation, if you have a quarterback that's uniquely gifted at doing something, you're able to change the system that helps him do that thing. Patrick Mahomes, I think, is a very good example of this, and Andy Reid helping. Patrick Mahomes plays the game in a different way to almost any other quarterback in NFL history, And Mahomes doesn't go, well, okay, that's nice, but stay the hell in the pocket and do what I ask you to do. They build the systems around that offense to work with what Mahomes does, So they change the patterns of, the scramble drill and these kinds of things to factor in what Mahomes is going to do. I think it's very, very hard even if you wanted to, for Cliff to look at this offense and say, all right, if that's the best thing we do, Kyler just running around like a lunatic and trying to make a play, what am I supposed? How do I help? How do I make that better?
You can't. There's an endurance factor with him too, where he can't be doing that all the time.
How long can you run around before?
Do you remember? I mean, I mentioned this a lot on the show too, but Vic, those games where he would run for 100, he was spent. He'd have a 50-yard run and it'd be like, dude, I got to hand it off the next 3 plays.
Yeah,
that is physically taxing.
Well, like Gerald Everett on Thursday night. It's like I'm done.
Yeah,
I can't move.
I don't know if that was just standing out to me more the last couple of weeks. It's the war of attrition, the battle of attrition of just keeping guys healthy. But the endurance factor, too, for offenses, defenses, for receivers who have to run a ton of routes all in a row, or defenses who are on the field a ton. I know there's more data. There's sports science type of data and all that stuff, and we might have some to dig into and everything. I am curious to see how that is affected, and are there players who are simply better in those situations, and if that becomes maybe a something that teams look at, right? This guy's fourth quarter motor is the same as his first, or whatever it might be, because it did feel like fatigue became an issue for a lot of teams down the stretch yesterday. Raiders, tough collapse here, man. They fall to 0-2 under Josh McDaniels.
That's a 0% chance of making the playoffs from my limited mathematical understanding of the last 2 years.
So it's over for the Raiders. Mail it
Done.
in. So the Raiders 0-2. They're in last place in the AFC West. And, can't get out of that.
So this is
my endurance is being tested here. We're at over 2 hours.
This is one of those ones where the late sort of reversal of fortunes for either team makes it very difficult to figure out what the takeaway should be. So the Cardinals, 10 minutes before the end of that game, my takeaway is the Cardinals stink this year.
Yeah.
And with their schedule, they might actually be done. Now they end up winning the game. You're like, did that change what I thought? Are things different now?
Yeah, and with the Raiders, it was hey, they had a tough game against the Chargers in week 1.
Yeah.
Carr put it on the ground a bunch. That's not going to happen all the time, but they're a better team. They showed that until they collapsed at the end. Yeah.
But the Cardinals' schedule is the next game against the Rams. You would expect them to lose that game. They might not.
Not necessarily. I'm not expecting that necessarily, but I mean.
Okay, the Rams will be favorites for that game.
Sure.
So they could easily be 1-2, and then Carolina, then the Eagles. So they have a lot of games they can lose in the period where they're typically winning a lot of games to start the season.
Well, let's wrap it up. Green Bay Packers 27, Chicago Bears 10. Make sure I didn't miss any games. Everybody shout if I didn't talk about your team, like people were here the entire time. Hit that thumbs up button as well.
The chat was here.
Chat?
The chat will have your back. If
Yeah,
you
the
missed
chat.
The team,
If I missed your team, well, a lot of people come in late. Hey, did you talk about my team yet? 7 hours ago.
Well, those people don't, only speak up if you've been here since the beginning.
Yeah, and smash the thumbs up button, of course. Am I saying this the right way? 27-10, Packers over the Bears. Bears were fighting early. Justin Fields, running touchdown. As I said in the pregame show, you got to have that one game where it's we're beating our rivals. And no, Rodgers efficient for the Packers. Packers' run game was unstoppable though. Aaron Jones averaged 8 per pop, including that he had that little pitch pass that was called a passing touchdown initially. It became a running play later. They switched it, but. Including that, Aaron Jones goes 15 carries for $132. A.J. Dillon carried the ball 18 times. I know I said that last year too, but there's something to having to play the Packers offense. And Aaron Jones is tough to tackle, and A.J. Dillon is going to put a little hurting on you, and the passing game is quick, and Rodgers is right. It is difficult to play defense against this Packers team.
A.J. Dillon is so big. It's insane.
Yeah.
He's built like Earl Campbell.
He really has the most impactful 3-yard runs I've seen.
Yeah. I mean, can you imagine, particularly in this era of, smaller, faster defenders, in particular, if you're a linebacker, so Roquan Smith. Roquan Smith's 230. He's given up 20 pounds to A.J. Dillon. And Roquan Smith's not a particularly undersized linebacker by today's standards. Can you imagine repeated instances of trying to tackle that dude just over and over again, and then when you finally get used to tackling the 250-pound monster, they just hand it off to Aaron Jones, who's got all that speed. Aaron Jones is one of those running backs where every time I see him, I seem to remind myself, he's really good. He doesn't get used as much because they can keep him fresh, and A.J. Dillon can take his share of the workload, but Jones is so good at everything. He's a really good runner. He understands space. He's got quick moves. He's got speed, and he's a good receiver. He's just a perfect back for this offense, and they are really dangerous when they can use both those guys at the same time.
Matt LaFleur's tapped into that, right? I mean, you don't have Devontae Adams. There's Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon out there on the field at the same time. You don't see a lot of that around the NFL, 2 running backs, right? Historically, it's always been a running back and a fullback because you want to have the defense think maybe you're going to line up with 2 backs in the backfield. But they're putting 2 backs in the gun. Nobody had more than 3 catches for the Packers. Sammy Watkins got behind the defense for a 55-yarder. So they're spreading the ball around. You never know if it's going to be Randall Cobb. This was better. Now, at the same time, I think the Bears are just still very much overmatched.
Sure.
They're just an overmatched roster. They were feisty early on, a couple sacks of Aaron Rodgers and some of their young players looking pretty good, but they're just overmatched.
And they made it close right up until they didn't quite score from the 1-yard line. Did you do somebody?
I did the research. I tweeted it out.
What do you got? So the controversy on this play is they get to the shadow of the goal line. Was it 3rd and short, 4th down, right?
It was 4th and inches.
Yeah, so 4th and nothing, and they line up with Justin Fields in the shotgun, who then tries to run it in and doesn't quite get there. Probably broke the plane of the goal line, but the replay couldn't show the ball, therefore you can't overturn it. So somebody was that seemed to the boss, to Chris, and to me, and to a bunch of other people, a bad play call. Why would you line up in shotgun multiple yards back from the line of scrimmage if you're just going to try and gain the 6 inches you need anyway?
So let me preface this by saying we have 4th and 1 data, not necessarily 4th and inches specifically here. So that might change things a little bit.
So there's a difference between a full yard and the 6 inches.
There's a difference between right. But I'm just going to give you the data, right? Because the initial reaction is like, I can't believe you idiots. Why would you snap the ball in the shotgun that close, right? And I'm just going to give you the data. Since 2017, touchdown percentage on all run plays from the 1-yard line, 63% from the gun, 55% with no shotgun. 63 to 55. In that sample,
these are all runs or just the quarterback runs?
That's all runs. I'll get you quarterback in a minute here. That's 289 shotgun runs versus over 1,100 no shotgun.
Okay.
Now, quarterback runs with no gun, it's, what did I say? I just tweeted this out too. So with just the quarterback, in the gun, it's 74.5%.
Okay.
And only 60% no shotgun.
Wow.
Now, what is baked into all this? The quarterback shotgun runs, we've only got 55 of them versus 205 with no shotgun. So only 55 quarterback shotgun runs from the 1. A lot of people initially said, well, yeah, that's all Cam Newton. It's a fair take.
Yeah.
So I looked up Cam Newton. Cam Newton's 3 for 4 in this situation. Now, when you expand it to the inside the 5-yard line, Cam's like 12. He's got like 12 of them or something. He's like 12 for 15 or whatever it is. So inside the 5, Cam Newton is stealing it. He's only 3 for 4. The entire NFL is 41 for 55 on shotgun quarterback runs from the 1. So here's the other piece of this. Clearly, Tom Brady's not the one running these.
Sure.
Right? So but like I started looking through the playlist. You have like Alex Smith on a keeper. You have Deshaun Watson. So it's usually the more mobile quarterbacks. It's a guy like a Justin Fields who's running it. So there's some selection bias there. You don't take every quarterback, throw him in the gun. But Justin Fields would be the guy that you select.
Yeah.
So then I looked one more time. They ran QB power.
Yeah.
And so QB power is basically the front side of the line blocks down. You get a pulling guard coming around the backside. QB power itself had only been run 7 times from the 1 since 2017. But so tiny sample. We don't glean anything from this as like, well, of course it's good because it worked. But previously it had worked 5 out of 6 times, according to our data. So now since 2017, it's 5 for 7. Justin Fields and Jalen Hurts are the only 2 failures at that point.
Okay.
So I would never use that data and say, of course you run QB power. You're 5 of 6. Of course it's going to work.
But I think there's enough data there to say.
But there's enough data to say, listen, Twitter, instant reaction nonsense. Shotgun can work. It's not a terrible call. It's not like it's 30% shotgun and 80% under center.
At a minimum, you're looking at that data and saying, it wasn't a bad call.
It wasn't a bad call.
And actually, the data suggests it's a better call than the one you expected them to make, which is just line up right, under center and try and force everything forward 6 inches.
Now, all that said, I would have run a QB sneak. Yeah, I would have run the QB sneak.
Yeah, I mean, I think from 6 inches, there's a lot to be said for if you have a quarterback that isn't Kyler Murray, get him to pick the ball up,
and even
just go
Kyler,
like that.
You just burrow.
But I didn't even just
go right under the
pick it and reach. You only have to get it here.
Oh, the reach move. I'm gonna make one more baseball analogy. I'm sorry.
Beautiful.
I apologize.
A baseball. So you're going for a twofer, a baseball and an analogy.
My take on quarterbacks in the QB sneak. So a lefty pitcher in baseball has an advantage when there's a runner on first base. He's facing the runner.
You can see it,
right? And the runner, it's tough to steal on a lefty pitcher. To me, a lefty pitcher in baseball, there's no excuse for them not to be good at not letting runners steal the base on them, right? They should have a good pickoff move. They should be really good at that. It's like it's just an effort thing. Like you should be able to work at that and be good at it. It doesn't take talent to be good at that aspect of the game. I feel that way about QB sneaks, right? The fact that like Tom Brady's mastered it and done a great job with it. Drew Brees used to do the over-the-top move and all that stuff. I feel like that's an effort thing. The fact that Big Ben never mastered that at the end, like just, dude, come on. Those should be free yards. Like Carson Wentz is good at QB sneaks. Justin Herbert, I think, has become Jimmy Garoppolo. Anybody can be good at QB sneaks if you put the effort in. And I think every quarterback should have as part of their repertoire the simple QB sneak, the one where you kind of go to the B gap, the over the top at the goal line, and then if you get good at that, like what happens with Brady, you're so good at it, they put 4 guys there. And then you just run an outside zone play, and they're out-gapped, right? This should be easy offense. And I'm not saying Justin Fields isn't. I'm just talking quarterbacks in general. Every single quarterback should be good at this.
You know what Roethlisberger's problem was?
What's that?
He's too wide. You put that flak jacket on him, that man's taking up a full gap by himself. You're not getting. You can't burrow, and he couldn't jump. So there's no up, there's no spring. He was just the wrong shape for QB sneaks.
The wrong shape?
Yeah. He was like Roethlisberger's, if you were describing Roethlisberger's body shape, it would be rectangular. And it's quite a wide rectangle.
You don't think rectangles can sneak?
No. Rectangles can't sneak. You can't jam a rectangle into a gap, into the A gap. It doesn't work. You need to be narrower, skinnier, or have the capacity to leap over the top.
Yeah, maybe.
That was his problem.
Rectangles can't sneak. If you've learned anything today from the PFF NFL podcast, I'm ready to plug in now.
Oh, yeah?
Any other takeaways from this game?
No, but if that is going to wreck the audio and make the buzzing sound start, at least it's only the last minute or two.
I just plugged in my laptop. Any buzzing? Anything here? So, yeah, I just think Bears were overmatched. It was funny how Rodgers, at his post-game interview, basically said, this is just like last year. Terrible week 1. Come back the next week against a division opponent. Like last year was the Lions. This year it's the Bears. So they got the setup for the bounce back game. And then week 3 last year, the Packers had the dramatic comeback against the 49ers, tough team in the conference. This week, the Packers have to go to Tampa Bay to go play the Bucs. Tough game week 3. Very much like last year when the Packers were the number 1 seed in the whole deal. So I think there's still questions about what the Packers offense looks like, and when it's crunch time, who's the guy? Do they have a guy? Is Rodgers still comfortable spreading the ball around? But offense looked pretty good last night.
Yeah.
And they won the battle up front for sure.
Mm-hmm. I will say that one of the takeaways from week 1 with the Bears, we were like, is this real or is this fake? It's, that offensive line looked pretty good against San Francisco, where they were supposed to be massively overmatched. And you're like, yeah, but it's a sloppy field. Nick Bosa was neutralized even without what you were doing to him. They didn't play great yesterday, but I do think that line might be okay. Might not be a disaster this year.
I think they're really protecting them.
I think they are too, but that's part of it. Like the way that they're able to protect that offensive line. My point being, I don't think the line is going to be a crippling reason that nothing can function on this offense, which was a real possibility heading into the year.
How is Justin Fields only dropping back, 17 times?
It was the game plan. This is Fields saying that, not me.
18 times.
Matt's like, I just
No,
run with the
17 times. In it, what's the game plan? The game plan has to be put points on the board.
Run the ball. Run the ball down their throats.
Did they run the ball well outside? They had a couple big runs. They had a couple big runs when they made their comeback. I mean, they did run the ball all right.
They seem to run the ball reasonably well, kind of inside with I'm using the word power without meaning the play
Not
power.
the play call?
Yeah, using the physical power. And then they kind of went away from that and started trying to run more laterally and stuff, and that's where it seemed to fall apart a little bit. But I think they can run the ball pretty well inside.
Yeah. Well, Packers moved to 1-1. I mean, it was the first place Bears versus the last place Packers. Last place Packers pull off the win here.
The upset.
Yeah, 27-10. Packers win. I think that's every game. There's 2 Monday Night Football games tonight.
Yeah.
Pretty fun. Should they do this every week?
Well, they overlap as well, so it's not.
They do.
It's not like a back-to-back thing, which they've done in the past.
I kind of like it. Because I got the 2 TVs set up. I can handle it. I can handle 2. Yeah. I can handle 2 Monday night
And they're
games.
saying there's going to be a lot of crossover. It's going to be like a red zone channel, with this constant, with the back and forth checking in both games, all that kind of thing.
That's what they're doing?
Yeah.
Because it's ABC and ESPN. They're making it
both. Yeah.
Making it an event.
Uh-huh.
I think I would like maybe fewer islands and more.
You just want 2 games going on at the
I
same
want
time.
double island games.
Yeah.
If it's not an island game, what is it? If there's 2 island games, what do we call it?
Archipelago?
It's a peninsula game.
No, peninsula. No, it would be an archipelago, right? The multiple islands of the chain.
There you go. All right. I like that instead of island games. You should tweet that out.
It's an archipelago game.
Archipelago? Is that how you?
No, I'm
Archipelago?
pretty sure how I'm pronouncing it isn't quite correct, but how you pronounce it is even worse.
It's a good chance. All right. Well, I think that's it for us. So we have Joe Thomas on the show Wednesday.
Yes.
We'll be previewing the Wednesday night game. Send us in some. There's always something to talk about during the season, but send us your emails. It's nflpodcast@pff.com.
Mm-hmm.
Sound good?
Yes, it does.
All right. Appreciate all of our sponsors. Don't forget to go get the PFF app. Appreciate No House Advantage, DraftKings, Symbol. Be sure to check out everything that they are offering. Thanks to everybody for tuning in.
And what do you got to do on your way out?
Oh, thumbs up on the way out. Thumbs up, like it.
There you go.
Maybe even listen. If you're listening to the podcast, give us the 5-star review. Do all that too. Yeah.
And a nice review. Write some
say some nice things.
florid prose about us.
Vote on who you like better, Steve or Sam. Let's really start. No, don't do that. All right. Thanks to everybody for tuning in. See you Wednesday.